Good evening, interwebs, and welcome to the inaugural podcast of Unaffiliated with Tim McGraw. My first guest is Matthew Murphy, a former CIA operator, ex-Green Beret, pedophile hunter, and child trafficking investigator all over the world. We cover a wide range of topics. There's really something here for everybody to be offended by, but the government will really hate this episode. We cover aliens, tombs, demons, angels, giants, war, the CIA, secret societies, and much, much more. So if you hate the government, hate bureaucracy, hate dogma, tribalism, and our government killing babies with our money in our name, this is the channel for you. Please like, subscribe, and watch out for future episodes. So without further ado,
Matt
let's
Murphy,
fucking go.
everybody. I'm sure I just did an intro, but I want to start off by thanking you, man. I mean, this is taking time out of your schedule for a guy that's essentially a brand new YouTube channel that we're starting here, a podcast. So your time is valuable, and I really appreciate you taking time to sit with me. I've been excited about it. When I first asked you a few weeks ago, whenever it was, I'm like, "There's no way he's gonna say yes." He's gonna be like, "Fuck you, kid." But you're here, and there's obviously a lot going on in the world that you have a front row had a front row seat to. I think I said in the lead up to this is that not many people are pointed at the tip of the spear that actually have firsthand knowledge of what war costs, what the real repercussions are, and the real nonsense reasons we're told for being there. Real quick, just a little bit of background on you, so everybody understands how unique your experience has been, and then we'll just dive into whatever.
Oh, definitely, man. Well, I was probably like a lot of guys in college. Didn't know what the hell I wanted to do in my life, right? Switched majors a bunch of times, partied more than I studied, and I just enjoyed the booze and the women in college. I mean, I was just being 100% honest. I wasn't really worried about much else, and that doesn't lead you anywhere good if you're trying to have an academic kind of life, right? So I joined the military, and when I was a kid, I think like most guys, with a testosterone. I don't know if kids have testosterone anymore. It's debatable, but back in our day, I wanted to be GI Joe or James Bond or both, man. So I was like, let's do it. So I went into the Army recruiter's office and I literally told them I want to go fight in Iraq, and
What
they
year
didn't
was
tell
this?
me there was this was in 2005, the first time.
Okay.
Well, so the lady like asked me some questions. I was a college student. I guess I looked put together when I went in there. She didn't tell me it was a drug test, right? So I went to MEPS and I was going through I passed all the stupid crap they make you do, hearing, decide, all that. And then they're like, all right, you got to go to the bathroom, take a drug test. And I was like, oh shit, because like it was college. I was smoking pot all the time. I mean,
I still do every day. So
I was like the preppy Cheech and Chong, man. And so I went and failed the drug test, and at that time they needed people so bad, to come back. I think it was, I don't hold me this, 6 months or a year, one of the two. I had to wait and come back. So I came back, was ready to pass the drug test, had stopped smoking pot, and I was serious about it, training and all that. And I joined, and I went in as infantry. Got stationed in Germany, and my first deployment was right after my oldest daughter was born. And 2 weeks after she was born, I went to Iraq and we spent 13 months there. And that was in Sadr City, Iraq. Pretty crazy time to be in Iraq, especially the beginning, first few months of the deployment. Deaths and bombs and all kinds of the things, right? Just a crash course, because I grew up, pretty spoiled, I would say. Kid, once my mom remarried. She remarried when I was 10, 11, and stepdad was a doctor. Stepdad was Jewish, and from Jewish family, and I think I've talked about that online. That'll be funny to most when we probably dive into other topics later.
yeah.
But he was a great man. I didn't convert to Judaism or anything, but he adopted me. And he raised us, paid for everything, took care of us. He was a father figure, right? I love the man to death. He unfortunately passed away about a month ago.
Jesus, I didn't know that was that recent. Wow, I'm sorry.
Yeah, man. Yeah, COVID got him, gave him blood clots and killed him. Or the COVID vaccine just wasted away from clots over years. Yeah, it's tragic, man. So anyways, I don't tangent on that too much, but that's a whole nother, thing, right? So I was raised in, pretty affluent, upper middle class neighborhood, had all the opportunity. I was just a party kid. So then you go for like, next thing you know, from like the suburbs of, Tennessee, even basic training's kind of a joke. I mean, you just get yelled at and work out, so then you just get thrown into war, and it's like, it's a reality check, man. I see somebody die the first time, all that stuff. So, but there was this one night, this group of guys came in on like Toyota Hilux trucks. For people that don't know, those are like the Toyota Tacomas here in the U.S. And they had beards and badass guns, wearing whatever the fuck they wanted to. And I was like, who the hell are those guys? And they're like special forces. And one of the guys like, don't look up, kind of thing. We're like an army, right? Infantry. And I was like, I want to do that shit. So, as soon as I got back from the deployment, I went to that SF recruiter's office, and I was like, I want to go to Special Forces, and started the whole thing. Got selected, training, and then I ended up in 5th Special Forces Group. I was stationed here in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Right after I got there, got deployed to Afghanistan with my first team. And while we were in Afghanistan, I got notified as detailed to the CIA, right? And I'm like, well, shit. And then went and did a project with them for a while, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But the crazy experience, and that's really where I got my first taste of how effed up the world is, how effed up our government is, and how just almost everything's fake and gay and a lie, man. To be honest, that's what goes on behind the scenes. And so I don't regret my service at all. I had a great career. I'm a Green Beret. I was a sniper. I was a SOTAC, or the guys who coordinate the bombings from planes. I became a spy. I became all the things, man. I became everything little kid Matt wanted to become. And I'm proud of that. And I don't regret my service. But what I
You
learned
can't,
is,
man. You were following. You were,
yeah,
you were a kid. I mean,
yeah,
we were all idiots back
yeah.
then.
100%, man. But you don't know why you don't really, like, I think we talked about this before, like the Toby Keith song playing in the background, 9/11. And then when you start to learn the truth that, the Israel did 9/11, and that it was the inside job coordinated with the Mossad and CIA, and Bin Laden and 3 other attackers were CIA agents. And you're just like, man, and I'm not saying, and I want to be very clear on this, just so people understand this as I talk on this, a lot of these things going forward, is that there are a lot of red-blooded good Americans in the CIA. There are a lot of great salt-of-the-earth Americans in the CIA. There's also the deep state in the CIA. There's also controlled agents in the CIA. There's people that have allegiance to Russia and Israel and all kinds of other things. There's people that have allegiance to political parties, or are funded, or there's other, in every organization and everything man creates, right? There's it gets infiltrated by people.
And it's so compartmentalized in the CIA that it's not like what these other scumbags are doing, or you're not read into all the other crazy shit. So you're doing your job to your best ability, while who knows what else is going on, So you can't paint everybody with the same brush,
100%. Well, then that's how I saw the two different worlds. Because in special forces, we're, it's kind of cowboy-esque, right? Everybody is the best at what they do. Stupid intelligent, it's cream of the crop when it comes to physicality and just capability, right? And you're just fighting with your boys, man. You're just trying to make sure all of you make it home, right? And you're following orders. And even though you're behind the curtain a lot in special forces, you're still just, you're working for the government, right? You follow orders. You do what you're told. And the CIA, you're right. It's compartmentalization. That's where you get into the hybrid of politics, intelligence, geopolitical movements, all those covert activities, Title 50 programs, all the things that spin off. And Trump's made comments on this so many times, so many politicians have, the CIA runs the world pretty much, because they're Title 50. They, no one knows what anyone else is doing. I remember a lot of times the ground truth that we were reporting on this operation and we can get to it if you want. But by the time it got to the presidential daily brief, it was a totally different thing. So the most powerful men in the world are not the president. They're the people that control the information the president makes his decisions from, right?
They're lying to you, and they're lying above them. It's like nobody's getting the truth, 100%. Right?
Oh, 100%. Because, between me, the guy on the ground, and then the president, there's the hierarchy of the CIA, their rank structure. And then, who's in the command of the certain offices. And then you get into the political wings of the CIA to the directors levels and all those appointed positions that have to tailor intelligence or tailor a narrative one way. And you don't know who they're allegiant to, whether they're Democrat or Republican, or they're deep state, or they're Satanist, if they're, allegiant to Israel, if they're a satanic pedophile, if they go to church on Sunday. You just don't know who these people are. So, and because it's so compartmentalized, the CIA has done everything wrong, from creating cartels, funding cartels, creating human trafficking rings, drug rings, it's all the evil things you can think of that have happened in the world. There's a CIA agent or some asshole involved in it, and a lot of times it's just to collect information, but a lot of other times it is it's just a direct operation, countering whoever's in charge at that time, right?
I've always kind of wondered about the amount of oversight in the CIA. I watched John Carrico and Andrew
Mhm.
Bustamante, who I don't like at all, but after a while, all the cash that they talk about paying these guys off, could you imagine how much grift and skimming gets done by some of those guys?
It's crazy. Oh, 100%. I mean, brother, money makes the world go round. And, yeah, I just, there's been times in my life when I've had bags full of cash. I'll just put it that
Yeah,
way,
and if you
right?
stuck
And,
if you stuck 10 grand out of a million in your pocket, who's gonna know, right?
oh, but who's going to know? But people like me would get crucified because I'm not at the director level.
Yeah, exactly. You're the
I'm getting
sacrificial
audited,
lamb.
No, I remember I gave a Syrian general million something dollars. I don't know, when we were fighting ISIS, to do something. And, I was one of like three people that was allowed to leave Incirlik Air Base. We had a home on Incirlik Air Base, and I would leave with the Turkish National Intelligence and run around the country. I was partying my face off and working, right? Well, I was having fun. Everybody's like, I had a little side hustle going where, I would get shit for people because they couldn't leave the base, and get a little upcharge delivery fee on there.
Of course.
I was living the good life, man. But also I was doing my job, right? And helping build the Free Syrian Army. That was a total cluster fucking failure. But I was one of the few people like that was allowed to leave base, had my own car, just doing my thing, and you know, it was, I don't know how to say it the right way, but it was, we were doing the right thing, our mission. But then they tried to crucify me because I didn't have a receipt or like a computer with something that a Syrian general could sign on. So I got a napkin from a coffee shop, and that had the receipt. I put his name, it was like $1 million, sign it. And so I brought back a fucking napkin, and I,
Well,
I
what did
got
they expect
investigated.
from you? Did they expect him to say yes, bribe from United States? I mean,
Yeah, exactly, man. I just do what I do, bro. And eventually I didn't do the wrong thing, so they let me go home. But but that's that stuff. Way just get shit done, man. And I'm just seeing so many different levels of warfare. From conventional warfare to special operations to intelligence operations, and then I got behind the curtain on probably, I would say, one of the most significant events of our lifetime, or at least in the military world, with the whole ISIS fiasco. And then, and what it's doing today, even still, we could be getting ISIS attacks, here in the U.S.
ISIS, who was created
Any day now.
by Zionists along with Al Qaeda,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
They never
They
seem to
all are,
attack
man.
Israel. ISIS and the Taliban never come
Mhm.
after Israel for some reason, right?
No, yeah, right. Well, that's because Israel controls them. I mean, the one of the heads of ISIS, I forget, somewhere in Africa. I wish I remembered right now. Came out and said he was a Mossad agent. Most of ISIS, the leadership, is Mossad agents, right? I don't know their names and shit. I'm not going to dime them out and get killed, but ISIS is Mossad. Yes,
Yeah, and
100%.
it's controlled opposition, right? We'll fund you. We'll give you
Yes.
money. You just make Muslims look really bad, and it's insane. But the percentage of people that just have their eyes completely closed to this is what befuddles me. I mean, obviously,
Oh,
you have
yeah.
you have info not a lot of people have, but it's so obvious now. I mean, obviously, people are waking up to the fact for sure. But you know, with that background, I'm curious if you had a 19-year-old son, and he said, "Dad, I want to enlist. I want to be a SEAL. I want to be a Ranger. I want to be a Green Beret." What would you say to him?
I've thought about that. You know how many of my friends, now that I'm 42 and, got friends that are 30 to 60, right? And we're just men now, right? And I cannot tell you the amount of calls I get from my friends who are fathers whose kids want to join the military and ask me to talk to them. And that's a tough thing. I wrestle with that because here's the deal, man. I mean, I know most of the things that I did for the military were not necessarily for the best of intentions, but this is still my country, right? This is still my home. My children live here, my family's here, my friends are here, right? And, if Trump's going to do some stupid shit like attack Iran, which is probably one of the most catastrophic moves I think an American president has ever made in the world, and America just does not understand what this could turn into yet.
Iran is a fucking fortress, dude. Afghanistan was a fortress. This is worse than Afghanistan, surrounded by mountains and everything's underground that's important. Like
100%. And not only that, the ramifications on the global economy. In my opinion, you don't attack Iran unless you want the economy to collapse, and the U.S. dollar really to collapse. That's my opinion.
They want Armageddon. They literally they all want the end of the world. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember, man. Like, that's the whole goal the whole time. And we can definitely jump into that one if you want, but. I just finished this on the ISIS part and the terrorist part is, majority of Americans are just asleep. And you got to remember, like, how Americans are developed. Americans are raised in this bullshit school system where they're under fluorescent lighting, 8 hours a day, droning through topics.
Yep.
And most of the teachers, I'm not insulting teachers. This is just the system. They're a product of the system too. They make 40 grand a year, 50 grand a year. They're not going out of their way to be experts on topics and shit. They're given a book and a curriculum and say, teach them this.
They're handing out the same worksheets they have since we were kids. Memorize this for the state test and leave me alone. Yeah. And again, there's a lot of good teachers, but there's a lot of ones that just phone it in and just do what they've done for years. We're trying to make robots. We want people to pay taxes and shut the fuck up. That's what we're trying to create in school. Is don't question authority and make sure you show up and don't have tardies or absences because we get less money if you do. It's basically prison. Like you said, fluorescent lights. You're not outside. You're not being a kid. You're memorizing shit for the state test. So
you are, man. You are, and it's difficult to see, man. So when you look at what's being created, the people that are being created from these school systems, and it's not their fault. We're just raising retards, and I don't want to it's just they're mindless minions who have not been taught how to think critically. The thinking is done for them. They're given the answer, right? They're given a question and the answer, right? So when you create a mind that can't think critically, can't construct their own thoughts, can't hear information that might challenge the bullshit they've heard, then process it, study it, and then change their mind, change their opinion, formulate a new belief. You're raising minions, right? So they hear something, they scream, and they hear, "Oh, that's crazy," and that's how they get away with the conspiracy is the stupefaction of the United States populace. Now, there's I don't know the percentages on this. I mean, but there's a small portion of America who's just intelligent enough to get it, right? You can raise them in that system, teach them that system, but they're just going to get it because they have the intelligence capability to be able to see past the bullshit. And
I think a big part of that is in the rise of independent media, right? When we were kids, we had NBC, CBS, ABC, and the Wall Street Journal and a few publications that were trusted, and you just ate up whatever was on whatever Walter Cronkite or Peter Jennings or that was the truth. But now they can't suppress everybody, right? And the media is still owned and still called Zionists. But now you got guys like you and me and Dave Smith, I fucking love. You got even Alex Jones. The guy's a little bit kooky sometimes, but look at how much shit that he said that's been 100% fact.
Right.
Like the word anti-Semite, I feel like the word conspiracy theorist is losing its meaning because everything that was been called a conspiracy ends up being 100% true. COVID came from a lab, right? 9/11, those towers did not fucking come down from a plane hitting them. It was obvious demolition. All these things, but they tell you you're crazy over and over again. And we used to be like, oh, okay, just put those people in the corner. I think now we've reached critical mass, right? where there's enough people waking up. It's still not. It should be a lot more. But I'm saying the point being is there's enough people to make enough noise that is getting out, right? And
100%.
what I worry about though is like with Palantir and with Pegasus, which I'm sure you know a lot about, with because intelligence agencies use it so much. But the fact is, a real revolution at this point. I think we talked about this a little bit the other day. Is I'm worried how it's even possible, because what are you gonna do it on Facebook? Make a Facebook group? We're gonna go storm the whatever. I think you said yesterday it's going to take something that sparks it. There's going to have to be somebody that sparks it, and that person's going to be a hero, 30 years from now. But they're going to be in jail in the meantime. But they're just going to infiltrate every group that comes together. They're just going to do what they do in Michigan with the bullshit kidnapping of the governor, where they get the dumbest guy in the group to jump in a van, not knowing where he's going, and give them a box of guns or whatever. And that's how they do it. They don't solve crime. They create crime to make themselves look good. They go out and find dumb people that are willing to be or not willing to, just too dumb to understand that this is a fed. So I worry that any organized opposition to this is very, very hard to put together if you're going to not just talk but do. So, but real quick, back to the kid thing. I know this is something you probably don't want to answer, but just I have a nephew that's in the Navy, right? He's not going to he's not in any danger, right? He does supply stuff for the F-35s, so he might end up over there. But and like you said, it's something you struggle with. You want them to be patriotic, in that you want them to love their country, and you want them to realize that this is the best country on earth because our founders created the most amazing system of government that they're ashamed of us right now. If there's any afterlife and Thomas Jefferson and those guys are looking down on us, they're saying you guys are pussies. What
100%.
have you let happen? But with the kid, what do you do? If you know that they're going to be sea combat and you know that they're going to be over there fighting for Israel, I'll just say what I would say is all my kids are exposed to all this stuff anyway, so they wouldn't do it. But I just say, loving your country is great, but dying for Israel is something you can't undo. To let them make their own decision. But I'm curious what you would say.
Yeah, man. Here's the catch for me on this one, right? Is the world's always been corrupt, right? It's always been the battle of
new thing. This is not a new. Yeah.
We've been fighting evil wars since I joined. But here's the thing, man. I'll just look at this. This is what the military did for me. Right now, if it's World War III and everybody's just mass dying, that's a totally different situation. But, I got to become a man. I was just me and my brothers fought my whole life. But, I got to learn how to shoot guns. I got to learn how to kill. I got to learn how to, frame a house. I got to learn how to do electricity and plumbing and wiring and fix things and cars and mechanic stuff. I got to learn intelligence. I got to learn how to do SATCOM and networking. And I got to learn literally everything. Like, there's about nothing, I'm not great at everything, but special forces guys were jack of all trades, masters of none kind of thing. There's not really anything that I can't figure out right now because of my military training. I got to learn how to be hungry. I got to learn how to be tired. I got to learn how to suck it the fuck up. I got to learn how to, accomplish your mission. It's either you live or you die. You don't quit. I got to learn how to become a man. And then I got to learn how to become a spy and a Green Beret and all these things. I'm very, proud of all the things that I became and I accomplished. And, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without the military. Now, granted, had I got shot in the fucking face, it'd be all been for what? I got shot in the face, right? But that's your job as a soldier, right? Is you know that. I don't think there's been a nation, and I can't remember, that's just been the good guys. You know what I mean?
No, at
some point,
it doesn't exist.
When you create a nation, the point of that nation is to thrive, right? And to have all the money and to have all the the food and to be safe and the biggest, in America, everything's bigger and better. We're brainwashed. We're all brainwashed, warmongering warlords from day one. We're the best. Best in America will kill you. Everything in the world is ours. We're all brainwashed into that. Myself and you too. Like, we're all subconsciously. Venezuela's not doing what we want them to do. Let's go kill them. Iran's not doing what we want them to do. Let's go kill them. Let's just go take over everything because it all belongs to us.
I
We're
mean,
the
we've all been
world's
trained
superpower.
to hate Muslims and ignore and not look at what the
Yeah,
Jews are doing, right? And I feel
because
bad
the
for them.
Jews own everything.
My
I
buddy
mean,
married a Palestinian girl, and I went to their wedding, and it was cool, and she's awesome, and but I admitted to both of them. I said I want to apologize, Cena, because I really was super biased towards Muslims. Even when you guys got married, and now my view has totally changed. Obviously, there's bad Muslims, and obviously there's some backward parts of their religion and pedophilia, all
mhm,
that shit. Obviously, but at the end of the
mhm.
day, and I do worry about some of the Sharia law, like what's happening in Texas and Dearborn,
Yeah.
Michigan. But the real
Mm.
threat are the Zionists that have been embedded in our government at every level and corporations for decades.
Yes. Well,
That's the more immediate threat, I think.
here's the thing, brother. Like, I've tried to speak out a lot about this, and I've got a lot of content on my page, addressing these issues. But, you know, the Zionist agenda is the synagogue of Satan, right? They work for the devil, they worship the devil, right?
Hijack
And
Judaism.
so they're always plotting, they're always doing evil stuff. And that's why when you look at America, not just right now, this has been going on for a very long time. They really got their foothold in 1913 when Jewish bankers and Lord Rothschild created the Federal Reserve, right?
Yep.
If you control all the money, then after that, you can slowly control everything. Well, excuse me, quickly, right?
Well, the
The
media
last,
too. You have
no,
both of those things where the
yeah,
media's got not going to say anything about you, and you can declare
mhm,
anybody an anti-Semite that even questions you in any way.
yeah.
Those two things put together is crazy dangerous.
Well, they've messed the world up because they control literally everything because they control the money first. And Americans, a lot of Americans don't realize this, that the U.S. Federal Reserve is not controlled by the United States of America. No politician in the United States can tell it what to do. They control the dollar, they control inflation, they control interest rates, they control all of it.
And they
Right. So
print
that
money out of
controls.
thin air
So
and then charge us
that's how they
interest for
fund the
money
government.
that doesn't even exist.
Right. Well, yeah, that's how they fund the government. So the government's funded by treasury bonds. And in order to fund a treasury bond, they print money. Right. So our taxes have nothing to do with keeping the government, well, the lights on and the bills paid. Our taxes are what they give to everyone else. Right. And a lot of Americans don't realize that every year the government's funded by how much money, new money they print, and the money has no value because Nixon stopped the gold standard in the 70s. And what gives our money value, which is why we're doing the things that we're doing right now with Iran, Venezuela, the world's forced to trade in like
Petrodollars.
oil and petrodollar, right?
Yep.
That keeps our money in value. So, then, but when you look at the Jewish bankers set up a global Ponzi scheme, because no money has value, but it controls everything, right? So this fake note controls everything. They can collapse it at will, and there's a plan for behind that. But if you take over the Federal Reserve, well, then you start to control political donations. Now you start to own the politicians, and then you get to control the appointees and who works in bureaucracy, right? And so they took over the government, but then look at what the government's done to us through regulation, through bills, through laws. They took over private equity. They took over the banks. They took over corporations. They took over Hollywood and music. They took over everything because they controlled the money, right? It's not a conspiracy. You can look it
Well,
up,
and once you
right?
control the flow of money too, you control businesses and you keep people quiet because they don't want to make waves. Like if I say X,
100%.
Y, or Z, this investor is going to get mad, or my banker might cut me off, or whatever. So
Right.
it's a perfect way to silence people. Is they're worried about the
Mhm.
business and capital repercussions of coming out and saying anything.
Well, 100%. And that's why they have the threat. They've made these threats. I forget the woman's name, the word at the Israeli embassy that said, we're tracking you, we're watching you, like through Google.
Yep.
Everything you say, everything that you do, we will destroy you. We will know we know where you work, we know where you live. They've threatened us, they told us that. It's whatever, man.
If you control
Um
the information, you control everything, right? Because
mhm,
try asking ChatGPT anything negative about the Holocaust, and even
mhm,
Claude, which I switched to, same thing. Kimi, which is owned by a Chinese company, they
mhm.
have guardrails on. You can say
Well, it's
whatever you
probably
want
because
about
they
an
have Jewish
Irishman.
investors.
I could talk about I could talk to ChatGPT and Claude about the IRA and car bombings, and never once will it push back and say, "Well, I want to put this in context because just so you
Mhm.
know, this happened." But if you ask the same question, but substitute Zionist or Israel, it's Well, I can't get like I asked yesterday. I asked
Mhm.
ChatGPT and Claude to give me the top 15 most controversial verses in the Talmud. Both
Yeah.
refused to do it.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, man.
It's insane.
I do every time I post them, they get shadow banned. But they haven't deleted them yet, which doesn't make sense because it's just the verse from the Talmud. I post it straight from the internet. But man, but that's the thing. It's like if you think about it, um, this is good versus evil. It all is. And the only way, David Ben-Gurion, the founder of Israel, he was the leader of the Haganah militia, which is basically a militia of Ashkenazi Jews. So, for people that don't know this about the founding of Israel, there was multiple things that happened for Israel to come about. First was during the Balfour Agreement when they chopped up the Middle East, post World War One. The King of England, through the English Parliament, gifted the land now called Israel to Lord Rothschild, right? There's a letter in their museum, dear Lord Rothschild, right? So,
I'll put some of this
um,
stuff up in post. In
mhm.
post, I'm going to add some stuff like this. But
Yeah, no, it'd be great. And so dear Lord Rothschild, and then so that letter was triggering a lot of European Jews at this time, because you got to remember, like Judaism is a religion; it's not a race. There's no such thing as a Jewish race. There's different races of ethnicities of people that converted to Judaism, like the white Ashkenazis, and then the Sephardic, and then the Khazarians. But
most Israelis are
Judaism
not
is
Semites, and they don't
well,
allow
well,
DNA
yeah,
testing in
100%.
Israel for a reason.
100%. And Semitic is Arab too. Semitic means Arab and Jew. That means anyone from that region,
That
right?
speaks
So a lot of people
that
don't
speaks
know
that
this.
language and is from that region. That's it. And
100%. Well, so yeah, man. So we are in when you look at Israel, they started to flood the Palestine with white Ashkenazi Europeans who were Jewish religion. They started to settle there, and then in 1933 there was an agreement called the Transfer Agreement or the Havara Agreement. And this was where Nazi Germany, to get a lot of the Bolshevik Jews, because they were all evil and doing terrible things in society, they were behind the transgender movement, homosexuality, the sex clubs, the brothels, the child sex, pedophilia. All of those things were happening in Germany, just like they're happening in the United States right now. And the Balfour Agreement, Hitler and the Nazi Party agreed to send the Jews to Palestine. They would pay for them to get there. The Jews turned in all their belongings. So that's where you get the piles of shoes and piles of jewelry, piles of plates, piles of things that they use for Holocaust propaganda. Basically, the Jews gave everything that they owned to the Nazi government so that then the Nazi government could then sell it, give them a stipend, pay for their travel to Palestine, and then they would get a startup fee, right, to get their life started there once they arrived in Palestine. So that was called the Transfer Agreement or Havara Agreement. So most of the Holocaust propaganda came from that 1933, transfer agreement. So, anyways, these people started going there. They were accepted with with love, peace, and open arms because the true Jews, the Jews who had been there, are like the older Jews, the people that worship the Torah, Tanakh, Old Testament worship. Christians and Muslims lived in complete peace, no wars, no conflicts for 500 years in Palestine until the fake white European Jews started showing up after 1917.
yep,
So by 1933 is a
Khazarian
problem.
mafia came over.
Oh, 100%. So they started three militias, and Lord Rothschild helped fund these militias: Haganah, Lehi, and Ergon. And through acts of terror, direct warfare, murder, genocide, essentially, on Palestinian people, these three militias secured the land now known as Israel. And in 1948, when David Ben-Gurion created Israel, Israel was granted statehood. Um, Israel, Ben Gurion, had to name Lehi and Ergon international terrorist groups. So Israel was formed by two terrorist militias. Haganah, they didn't name that. So Haganah was directly transferred and became the IDF. And then also the early foundations of the Mossad. And then, of course, Lehi and Ergon did too. They just disbanded and those people went in.
Yeah, they just renamed
So,
themselves like APAC.
you know,
Renamed
yeah,
themselves.
100%. So Israel was created by terrorist actions and the murder of Palestinians and genocide, and had to name two of the groups terrorist groups, and then was founded by an atheist. David Ben-Gurion was an atheist; he didn't believe in God, right? And then their IDF and Mossad were literally started by terrorists. right? So it's and it's just insane. That's just the truth. You can Google this, you can fact check it, you can look it up, you can read it on the internet still this day. They haven't deleted this stuff, right? And so after that period, that's when a lot of the atrocities that Israel was doing started, right? Obviously, Israel and the CIA, and rogue agents CIA were directly implicated in killing JFK because he was trying to stop them from getting, the nuclear weapons. They stole all the uranium, I think, from Pennsylvania. I forget the company, but that was Ben Shapiro's uncle who did that.
I know,
And
it's
then,
crazy.
right? And then all the uranium got sent to like Israel. Nobody knows where it went to this day, right? But
It
the next
turns
thing you
out
know,
wanting
Israel,
to disband the CIA, defund
yeah,
Israel, and go after Israel's nuke program is a death sentence.
yeah, right. Well, good luck with that.
Right?
And so their nuke program's never been inspected. They've never had any
They had 200
international.
nukes back in the 90s, I think. So imagine what it is
Yeah,
now.
that's what they claim. That's what they claim. And who knows how many nukes they have?
Yeah,
But
they
they
have
stole
1,000.
all of our. Yeah, well, they stole all of our weapons grade uranium from America. So God knows how many nukes they've made, right? And then they started stealing the secrets and all that kind of stuff. Albert Einstein, who was Jewish, denounced the state of Israel as a terrorist state and wouldn't even work with them or even help them with their nuclear program. There's and that's really where the reign of terror for Israel really started. The USS Liberty attack. They withheld intelligence. In the
Shot the
80s on
lifeboats.
the yeah, right. And then they've withheld intelligence in Lebanon for the Beirut Marine barracks bombing, also the embassy bombing.
The
We
Lavon
got
Accords,
200.
or the Lavon Affair.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just never ending. Then, you get into assassination, obviously, of JFK, and then 9/11, and, everything that's happened after that. ISIS, Israel created Hamas. That's in congressional record, right? Israel created and funds Hamas. If most people don't believe it, they can watch the Bibi files.
You see Larry
Netanyahu.
Goldstein or whatever, the Twin Towers owner, just bought U.S. Bank Tower.
Yeah,
Lakeland
no,
Tower,
I
whatever it
mean,
is, in L.A. And now there's going to be drone attacks supposedly in L.A., even though it would take you 30 days to get a boat from Iran to the coast of California. I mean,
right.
it's just so silly. I mean, we're seeing it already. Whether they're false flag, complete false flag events or not, that's what they want us to fear. They want us to think that, oh my God, the drones are going to start hitting, and it's nonsense, dude. It's complete.
Well,
nonsense.
it is. Well, they troll us, man. It's Satanism, right? So Judaism, a lot of people don't understand. Jews don't worship the God of Abraham, right? They don't. They were kicked out of and exiled by God on the religious side. If you go to the Bible, Torah, Tanakh, they were exiled from the Holy Lands for idolatry, which means worshiping other gods. They were doing child sacrifice. They were Moloching. Moloching means child sacrifice, so the act of child sacrifice.
And Jesus was going against the Sanhedrin and going against the clerics, and that was the issue. That's part of why they killed him, is because
100%.
he saw it happening firsthand.
Right.
But
so they've been doing it for a long time, man.
And
so
willful
that leads
ignorance,
me
I feel like, for a lot of people at this point.
What's that?
I feel like it's almost willful ignorance at this point for Christians, especially evangelical Christians, to be Zionists. Most Christians, as you well know, have never read the Bible. They've got the Sunday school version of it. They've never critically read any parts of the Bible, right? And they just listen to my mother's own pastor is preaching from the pulpit that Israel's chosen and we must defend them, and it's insanity, brother. I mean, but so I feel like, as much as you and I or guys like us are called anti-Semites, how many? The problem is there's not enough Dave Smiths. There's not enough Glenn Greenwald or whatever that are actually like the typical Jew, the Jewish person. Even if they disagree, they're not going to say anything, and that's what's so frustrating. Is because they call it the general agreement or the general understanding that you don't need everybody to be super Zionist. You just need them to go along with. When interests align, you don't need a conspiracy. If you and I both want something to happen, we don't need to come up with a plan. We both just kind of let it happen or do what we can to make that happen. And I feel like there's way too many Jewish people that just go along with that. That Israel first, essentially. And
that's guilt, man. I mean, it's human nature right? In order for, we all, I'm not gonna say everyone's racist. That's a stretch, but we're all biased,
Oh,
right?
100%.
White people, because my skin's white, I'm a little more biased to hang out with other white people, right?
And a lot of stereotypes are stereotypes because they're fucking true. I mean,
100%.
right?
100%. And I've got a lot of friends that are Muslim and all kinds of different races and Indian and you name it, man. I mean, it's like I got a black friend. I mean, like no, but it's just like it doesn't mean you can't have friends and have relationships with people. But if a fight starts, usually the white people band together, the black people band together. It's just human nature. It's prejudice. It's just kind of how it works, right? And even more so with religion because it's just like radical Islam. Radical Islam goes out and does a whole lot of crazy shit, and very few Muslims denounce it because they're all Muslims. It makes them all look bad. Same thing with Christians. When like Christian white supremacists do some crazy shit, we're like, oh man, But and Jews same way. But in all religions, there's the verses about being a heretic, going against the religion, and that's how they usually guilt and why people stay quiet. It's difficult, but I think
that one of the biggest problems is how sectarian all religions are. Like Protestants aren't going to agree with Catholics, Baptists with evangelicals, Sunnis and Shia, but what I think a lot about this, like if this does come to the point where there needs to be a revolution, they have us split up into so many tribes and so many subsections, right? Black, white, gay, Republican, Democrat, where the only thing I think we can actually unite under is anti-supremacy, right? Or anti-Zionism. Like that's the one thing. Like as you know, that I'm not a Bible thumping Christian. I grew up evangelical Christian. Now I'm a deist, right? Absolutely believe in a higher power and greater intelligence. And Jesus was a great dude and all those things. I just don't buy into the sectarian dogma and all the interpretations and it's been, in my view, taken over by man, right? Most of the religions. But I do feel like that the one thing all of us can unite under, Muslim, Christian, atheist, agnostics, deists like me, is, you know what? We are all just humans, right? And there is no race or religion that should control another. Period. You do what you want to do in your house and with your family, but don't tell me that I am somehow subhuman. And I think that that's the one thing that no matter what tribe you fall in, and I try to not be in any tribe, but thus the unaffiliated. But I think that that's really the only thing that can bring us all together is to rally against Zionism and Jewish supremacy. But
it's just psychology. It's enemies, man. You need an enemy. That is the number one thing. People will just gather together. You need something to collectively fight. We're never going to all sing kumbaya. There's just too many differences, cultures, races, religions, beliefs, denominations, interpretations. There's just too many people that want power and great division. I mean, and then there's the devil. There's the evil, right? Evil never stops plotting. Evil never stops dividing. From one Bible, right?
Yahweh is the God of Judaism, of Christianity, and of Islam, right? And
it's not even that. I mean, you have 41,000 denominations of Christianity, 41,000 denominations. You have over 900 different, 3,000 different translations, like in languages of the Bible and parts of the Bible. And then you have 900 different interpretation translations in those languages, not mostly all of the 900 in English. But my point is, man, that creates division in itself. I mean, you see people, taking legalistic approaches to scripture. Well, that's a dangerous thing. What if you're reading King James, or reading NIV, or you're reading a Greek Orthodox or an Ethiopian Orthodox Bible? I mean, taking legalistic approaches and saying, I'm right, this is what God said, you can literally get in an argument with somebody who believes in the same Jesus guy, right? So religion is.
I think that's a big part of why our founders, a lot of people forget that the Pilgrims were fleeing persecution by other Christians, right?
100%, yeah.
And the one thing that was brilliant was the separation of church and state. As soon as somebody gets in power in their version of Christianity or their version of Catholicism, look at Ireland, right? I'm assuming you have some Irish in you. Look what those are two sects of Christianity were at war all the way until 97 or 99. So that is one of the most beautiful things about America is the secular nature of it. Yes, I do. People say we're Judeo-Christian. That's bullshit because Judeo-Christian's an oxymoron. But I do believe that, fundamentally we're a Western Christian country at our core. But as soon as you let that come into politics and the way that people vote, you get what you have now, where you have Pete Hegseth literally telling troops that Trump has been anointed to bring on Armageddon, right? There was 200 complaints filed in like 3 days to the Religious Freedom Foundation or whatever, because the commanders are over there saying this to the troops. I mean, it's bananas to me.
It's exhausting, man. It's exhausting. But well, man, we are a mostly Christian nation for the people, but we were founded by Jews. Christopher Columbus was a Sephardic Jew, and most of our founding fathers were Masons and in the Illuminati, right? So the Masonry and Illuminati was started by Jews. It's based on Judaism, specific Talmudic and Kabbalah, mostly teachings, and then Masonry is built around the Kabbalah as well. And so,
and then you have the Jesuits who really control the Catholic Church. The Black
Pope. 100%. Well, yeah, man. I mean, the Rothschilds are the biggest funder of the Catholic Church and have been since the 1800s, right? So Lord Rothschild,
both sides of almost every war, right?
100%. So Rothschild, the guy who created Zion, funded the guy Moses Hess, who created. So Moses Hess. I'll start here, right? Moses Hess wrote a book called Roman Jerusalem in 1862. And in this book, he created the concept of Zionism. He was the first one, right? I forget the other guy that everybody attributes Zionism to, but there's a reason they did this. It's because of Moses' book, Roman Jerusalem, he called for the Jews to become separatists and then move to Palestine and occupy Palestine. He didn't call it Israel at that time.
What year is this?
What's that? This is 1862. Moses Hess, right? And so they call him he was called the communist rabbi, right? That was his nickname.
The Schofield Bible written? That wasn't until the
1913. That was later, but the same people. So Rothschild's family, Lord Rothschild, same time frame. He early on started to fund Moses and his writings, and Moses created Zionism. But in this book, he called for Jews to become separatists and move to and occupy Palestine all the way back in 1862. He also called for Jews to practice racial eugenics and hygiene, which basically means the things they said Hitler was doing: keep our bloodlines pure, right? And let's have the best Jews mate with the best Jews, right? Let's create a super Jewish race. And then he called for the destruction of Christianity, which he called a death cult. He called Christianity a death cult. So he's like, we have to kill all Christians. And then he called for the eradication of the Aryan race, the white race. So the white Christian race. So he wanted to destroy white Christians. So the reason that Moses' writings have mostly been buried, and people can learn about this in Europa and some other things, is because he called for the death of all. He called for Jews to kill all Christians and then create a globalist and new world order, right?
And at the same time, marry into the royal families by prima nocta.
Well, 100%. And so right around that same time, I forget, Communist Manifesto, I believe the 1850s or after, Karl Marx, whose real name is not Karl Marx, he was Jewish as well.
Yep.
He wrote the Communist Manifesto, and Moses Hess and Karl Marx were best friends. And studied and scholars together, and guess who? But Karl Marx was in the family with Rothschild through a marriage by his grandparents, so they were related, right? So Karl Marx is in the Rothschild family tree, and he creates communism. So the guy who created Zionism because Moses Hess was the son of Talmudic rabbis who practiced Talmudic teachings. Karl Marx was the son of Talmudic rabbis who practiced Talmudic teachings. That's how they knew each other, became best friends. So Zionism is based on the Talmud. Communism is based on Judaism and Talmudic beliefs as well. All the communist ideology aligns. What's that?
The Kabbalah too, right? As far as
so Kabbalah is 12 to 13th century, but the Kabbalah is more magic and mysticism and witchcraft, Star of Remphan. So like the political ideology and the Zionist movement were more Talmudic. Now, of course, they practiced Kabbalah stuff like magic and all their stuff like sorcery and mind control. And there's a lot of dark, evil things inside of the Kabbalah. That's where the blood drinking comes from. You get a true Kabbalah, adrenochrome, all that, it's Kabbalah stuff.
Yep.
So then you go to like World War One, Franz Ferdinand, the assassination of the royal family, all of that stuff, right? So the Jewish Bolsheviks, they were 85% Jewish at the time, were the ones that started that revolution. The
30
Bolshevik
to
Revolution,
60 million Christians, 30,000 plus churches
right?
burned to the ground.
Well, because that was their first attempt to do two things: to destroy the white race, to destroy Christianity, and then start to create the Jewish empire, because they believe for their Messiah to come back, they have to take over the world. So the Bolshevik Revolution was Rothschild's first attempt at this, right? Well, obviously they didn't win. They created the Soviet Union, but they didn't work out the way that they wanted it to. White people stayed around. The communists came into power, but the whole Jewish radical movement stopped. Most of the Bolsheviks then went where? The only country that would take them in, Germany, right? And so Germany took them in, and the next thing you know, one extreme of pedophilia, transgenderism, multiple genders, homosexuality, all the things they were doing, the child rape, child sacrifice, brothels, teaching kids about sex, just that whole movement. They brought all that to Germany, and one extreme leads to another extreme, right? As the pendulum swings, and that's how Hitler rose to power. All the books he was burning was all the Jewish books. It was all the Jewish, evil and debauchery. So then, how can you get a country to have a 99% approval rating and support a man? That's how evil and how bad it must have been. Think about how bad it must have been for the German people to band together 99% approval rating for Hitler and create this Nazi party. But also at the same time, Hitler, turned Germany from the poorest country, in the world to the wealthiest country in the world, the most prosperous for healthcare, for engineering, all of the
Well, you got rid of the
autobahn, all the
bankers
highways.
first, right? That wasn't the first move.
100%.
Was they were usury through high interest rates
Hmm.
and predatory lending. They took over so many German businesses
Hmm.
and that's the way you do it. You man, senior secured debt. Oh, you didn't pay me back. Guess what? Your life's work, your family's business that's been around for decades is now mine. So
Right, 100%. Well, he capped it. He removed them from the Rothschild's banking system, and then they still had interest at a very small level, but you got kickbacks from the government if you had one child, two child, three child. If you were a new family, you got a home, and then at a discounted rate. He did all these things
like
that
Libya.
made Germany one of the most prosperous nations in the world. They didn't build the war machine first. They built the most prosperous, advanced economy and industry that the world has ever seen. I mean, all of the highways throughout Europe, the autobahn, all the rail systems, all of that was thanks to Hitler. So, I'm not saying Hitler was perfect, but Hitler did a lot of good things, right? And
Well, I think a lot of people wake up to the fact that when you listen to his speeches in German, they sound crazy, right? But listen to them and translated into English, and everything he says applies to now. It's
100%.
bananas. Like
You saw about synagogue Satan.
a buddy about this yesterday, and I think we've talked about it a little bit. Is just the indoctrination level that we had as kids growing up. It's like literally everything we taught was bullshit. Like all of history that we were taught in school, because Maxwell owned the McGraw Hill and Penguin Publishing and Paragon, and it's just complete nonsense. And I'm so glad that now with my daughter, I'm able to teach her the real history. Not that we'll ever really know because it's been skewed so many times, but we have a general understanding now of that your textbooks are bullshit.
Well, we do our best. We do our best, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. So Robert Maxwell, who was a Mossad agent, one of the most infamous spies, most notorious spies in Mossad history, created Maxwell Publishing, which then owned McGraw Hill, Pergamon Press, and I forget the Macmillan, right?
Yep.
And so this happened in 1948, the same year that Israel was created. By the early 50s, every school book in the United States was made through the Maxwell Publishing umbrella. So basically, Israeli Mossad dictated our history, our education, our math, our worldview, all of it. They framed America since the 50s, right?
And they want lemmings. They want
100%.
lemmings. They want just follow the man in front of you, pay your taxes, punch the clock, and shut the fuck up.
And so because they had already controlled the Federal Reserve, they already at this point control the bureaucracy, mostly U.S. Department of Education creation, all of these things. Well, now you've monopolized our brains. You've created the matrix because you now are in charge of everyone's brain in the United States, the education and the manufacturing of us into adults. So
you don't have any real media back then questioning anything, right? You have no yous or I's or Alex Joneses or Dave Smiths out there are, questioning the narrative. And I think that's the one thing that I've taught my kids from this, even before I was enlightened, was just question everything. I've always had a problem with authority, right? I hate being told what to do, and I hate being told how to think. And I think that's one of the few things that my kids have actually grasped onto, because I didn't have any certain agenda when I said it. Just don't believe what you're told, everything you're told. Do your own research, right? Just because it's in a book that's at your school doesn't mean it's true. And I wish more people
100%.
did that,
It's just it's there's this, it's a demoralization process. Everything is a process, right? And Jordan Peterson does a good speech on this, even though Jordan Peterson's controlled opposition and compromise.
100%.
But he's a smart man. Says a lot of,
I just don't like it seems like he's trying to sound smarter than you. Everything he says is so, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I know what you mean, but he has this talk about how you take someone's morals, values, principles, whatever you want to take away, and it's what he uses is an example of a man on a road, right? A man's on a road. He starts off standing strong in whatever he believes, the foundation of his belief, at the beginning of the road. And you start to push the man down the road by, challenging his morals or his values or whatever it is that you're challenging or going up against, and you push him down the road, and you get him to the point to where, all right, the kindness is turned, the niceness and kindness has gone away, and the man's about to fight you. He's about to protest and he's about to fight you, and then you just stop. You just stop. So you've taken a little bit of his morals or his values or whatever it is you're trying to whittle away, and he starts to get mad. But right before he's about to attack you, you stop. But you stand there. You don't move.
Yep.
You stay right there, and the man, society, individually or collectively, starts to just going back to living their life, doing their thing.
Well,
and then what do? You start moving them down the road.
You just don't want to make waves. You don't want to lose your job. You don't want to get cut off by your investors. You don't want to. So you just what's the easier path here, right? Just be quiet, right?
100%. Sorry, I'm gonna move my little charger thing real quick.
No problem.
So yeah, you're spot on, man, on that. And that's but it's, you keep pushing them down the road, and eventually you get down to the end of the road, and you've never once fought. And this is what a lot of people are going through in America right now. You've never once fought, but you've protested, and you've almost fought for years and so many times, but you've gotten so far down the road, you've lost your morals, you lost your value, you've lost your footing, you've lost where you stood, and now you're in almost a different state. You're in another country. You're nowhere near where you started, and it's a hopeless feeling because people, they don't just take everything at once. They take it little by little. That's why Maxwell Publishing works. They don't just change the history at once. They don't just change the world at once. It's little by little. You don't see Holocaust narrative in U.S. school books until the 60s. Right? Holocaust did not exist in education or the school books until the 1960s. It wasn't taught in the 50s. It wasn't taught right after World War II. They were taught, if you go back to those school books, and there's some people that have put them online, they were taught that Jewish people were put in internment camps. They were taught the truth. They were put in internment camps in the last 6 months of the war because the Allied powers in Russia had cut off all the supply lines, and they were getting injured and closer to winning. That typhus, a disease, was spread through the internment camps, and they started to starve.
Lice.
And there's right, and all the lies. So there was never gas chambers. There was never mass killings.
Delousing chambers. The chimney at Auschwitz wasn't added until what? I forgot what year, but
by the Russians after the war. Yeah. So and I'm not trying to fight people and say, hey, everybody's like, well, you're a Holocaust denier, or you're anti-Semite. No, I'm just telling you the truth. Because people need to understand the truth. You don't get to play a victim card if this isn't what happened. When do we get to play our victim card?
That they've been holding on to since the beginning of time. That predates the war. The
right,
newspapers
100%.
were saying there's 6 million Jews at risk. That was like all the Jews in that part of Europe, right? But they just stuck with the number. And all of a sudden now, fast forward, and they're teaching kids 6 million people died. And again, I'm not saying that Jews weren't murdered and there wasn't crazy SS
I'm sure some were.
Yeah, in war, there's all kinds of terrible things that happen, and guys that do things without the blessing of their whoever, and lots of Jews, I'm sure, were killed in horrendous ways. But the 6 million number is nonsense. It's complete
100%.
nonsense.
Well, the Red Cross, the official number is 290,000.
Yep.
A little bit over that. Yep. Official number. So that is the organization that is in charge of death, war casualties. The official number, 290,000. So Man, it's just the truth needs to be told. We've been lied to, and it's not anti-Semitic, and it's not anti-Jewish. I mean, I call myself a step Jew. I believe in Jesus. I'm a Christian, but I was raised by a Jewish man. I jokingly say step Jew. I have all the respect in the world for normal Jews, right? The Jews that aren't, Zionists, that don't believe they're, God shows people that should take over the world and enslave the goyim, right? Because all of that insanity doesn't start till you get into the Talmud and the Kabbalah. So normal Jews that believe in the Torah and the Tanakh, that rejected Jesus, they protest against Israel around the world all the time, and from New York City to inside Israel itself. They don't show you this on the news. They don't show you these things. So there is a huge part of the Jewish community that protests Israel. Are they anti-Semitic? Right? And so because in Judaism, even in the Talmud too, parts of the Talmud, they are not supposed to move back to the lands of Canaan until the Messiah returns. Right? So moving to Palestine, creating Israel is in direct defiance to God. In true Judaism, what they're doing is heresy. It's wrong. It's defiance to God. And it's the same thing that the synagogue of Satan inside of that Old Testament faith has done since the beginning of time, so to speak. It's defiance of God, idolatry. They don't worship the God of Abraham. If you follow the Talmud and the Kabbalah, this is not anti-Semitic to say. You can read the books. They don't worship the God of Abraham. They worship Baal, and they worship idols, and they do sacrifice, magic, mysticism, and witchcraft. That's what the Kabbalah is. Nowhere will you find that in the Old Testament, or the acknowledgement or condoning of that in the Old Testament. So
Well, they
it's
think
two
they're
totally
gods too.
different
A lot of
religions.
these guys say that Goyim should worship them because they are essentially gods on earth.
But that's what they're taught. Now, here's the other thing you got to remember, man. Just as much as Americans are raised and brainwashed that we're the best, we're the biggest, we're the strongest, we're like the world is ours and screw everybody else. We're brainwashed that, in America. Like we're taught that. Probably not as much anymore, but when we were raised, Pledge of Allegiance every morning, like we were just indoctrinated into our country's systems, the levels of what you would call fascism. I don't think fascism is all bad. It is bad if you think you can just go kill other people and take over other people. But you have to remember, when you're raised in a Jewish family that's Talmudic or Kabbalah, from day one, you're taught you're better. You're taught you're chosen. You're
I tell
taught
my
everyone
mom all
else
the
is
time
different.
that, Mom, if you were born in Iran or Palestine or wherever, as fervent as you are with the Zionism and with what that's you're a product of where you were born. So just imagine if you were born in one of those countries, you would agree with them. So you got to be able to break the mold. You got to be able to break free and think for yourself. It's that simple. If you just take spoon-fed whatever it is, whoever's at the pulpit or whatever your teacher, you got to be intellectually honest enough to say, you know what? Let me examine it. Let me go read history, read about the history. Let me actually read other, not the Schofield version of the Bible, but other, scholars that have other angles. But as soon as you're dogmatic and this is the way, no matter what, because this is the way I was raised, well, then any type of compromise, any type of, it's impossible because of that dogma, and that's why I, fight against it so hard. But
it's tough. You got to remember this, man. This has been going on since the beginning of humanity, right? And it's difficult because yes, there have been empires that have risen and fallen. We have. If you look at history, and if we even know if it's really true, right? We've seen the ups and the downs of societies. We've seen, the rise, the falls. We've seen why they fell. We've seen why they rose. And when you look at America right now, there's a lot of data and people that have written about this 250-year rule, where every empire makes it 250 years before it collapsed or until it collapsed. We turned 250, this July, right? So. Look at America right now. It looks like our dollar is about to collapse. You have Trump, Vance, all these guys doing the talking points now about the new world order. We're talking about taking over Greenland, literally talking about taking over Cuba.
Now.
We haven't even finished Iran. And then, what we just did in Venezuela.
Just look at the fact that all the most fervent and never Trumpers, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, all of these guys. Thomas Massey is the only Fed that I trust.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we can trust him. I don't know how Israel, the deep state hasn't killed him yet. But Yeah, but man, it's always been this way, but now I think we're about to see transformation because David Ben-Gurion, the founder of Israel, and I left this found out earlier. Yeah, this is a January 17th, also 1962 article in Look magazine. He said that the goal of Israel is to create a new world order. He says the goal of Israel is to abolish, countries, nation states, to create a global collective, globalization, abolish armies, have a world police, make the Noahide laws, the laws of the land, acknowledge the prophets, which is the multiple gods or the idols in Judaism, and then make this Jewish rule, globalization, new world order over the world that will then usher in the Jewish Messiah. Right? That's their
They don't
prophecy.
hide
That's
it.
what they believe.
They
Mhm.
put it right in your face.
Yeah.
The Euphrates to the what was it Tigris? The Euphrates to the
Well,
the
you're talking
Greater
about
Israel
greater
Project
Israel. Yeah.
is their
hmm
stated goal of
Yeah.
BB's party. They want it, so it's not just we want our little sliver of land and we want to be left alone. No, we want to dominate everybody in the region and take over all of Greater Israel. So this doesn't end. This is a forever war. There is no
Yeah.
way. I posted it the other day. There's really only a few different outcomes that are possible. Either we
hmm
just say mission accomplished, like we did in Iraq, and just leave, and then
hmm
leave this chaos and this vacuum behind, where like the new Ayatollah is even more fervently crazy than the previous one because we killed his entire family, his wife, his sister, brother, kids, nephew,
Father.
everybody. And
Nah.
now we think we're gonna somehow do all this, and it's just gonna democracy is gonna rise up in Iran, and they're gonna be Christian. No chance. And then so
Well,
the
but
other
here's
two,
the other thing they did, man. Like most people don't know this. That school, 200 girls that were murdered, those were Iranian general officers' children. That was on a military base. They murdered.
yeah, it was right next door, but they had
They
evacuated the
mur-
base,
There
and
was military service members, high-ranking Iranian service members. Those were their daughters that they murdered.
and they
You
double
know,
tapped it. They tomahawked it. Then they had another missile monitor the damage, and then redeployed it to. I mean, just like they did in the
well,
hospitals in Gaza.
yeah, that wasn't an accident.
No,
You
zero
don't,
percent.
yeah, it was, and that, for them to say we're just trying to have regime change when you murder 200 children of military officers, you murder the ruler, who's also a religious leader, not just a ruler of
Exactly.
Iran. He's a religious leader in the
He's a
Shia
murderer
thing.
now.
He's a martyr. I don't think America really realizes what they've done because Trump and Hegseth and all these people, they are lying to you about how this war is going. Israel is lying to you about what's happening in Israel. And, I think Trump could get a win out of this in a way. And so I'm not going to ever agree with what he did. But Trump is trying, and it'll be a temporary win. It won't last forever. Trump is trying to monopolize the oil trade completely under the United States of America, right? Because in order for us to succeed and create this globalization machine, we have to monopolize the liquid gold, right? That's the only way globalization happens. Topple leaders put puppets in, monopolize oil. So he might get a win in the next 2 weeks or coming months where China for a little bit plays ball. But China's a superpower. They are not going to let America control the world's oil. China relies on Iran for oil. Majority of China's oil comes from Iran. They have a 200-day supply that they can run their nation on. At some point, China's going to come calling. They might play nice for a minute, but there will be a point, I believe, where China and Russia make a move. China takes Taiwan. And, we might have a little bit of quote unquote peace. Trump might be able to play the victory violin or the victory song for a little bit. The economy might stabilize. This is a possibility and we'll get a win. But at some point, China, Russia, we're going into World War III. Nothing is stopping World War III now. He might be able to gaslight American people so that we're all secure. Trump did the right move. He's our Messiah. He's our God. Everybody look at me, get behind me. But sometime shortly after that, the world's going to descend upon us. And that's what they want because you have to destroy America to create globalization. You use the American military to set the stage for it, but you have to kill America. You have to kill America to globalize. Americans won't go for it. There's no amount of brainwashing. So, I think, in our
Imagine if we
lifetime,
were a European country, it'd be over by now. The fact that we
well,
have the
Europe's going to
Atlantic and
burn,
the
brother.
Pacific protecting us is really the only reason that a mainland invasion, and the fact that it's 300 plus million guns and guys like you and I that are willing to die on our feet. But
Well,
that's why Japan didn't. They briefly contemplated invading us, but that they realized there'd be a gun behind every blade of grass. But
that doesn't matter anymore. And this is a part that I really want Americans to start realizing is we're fucked, completely fucked. And here's why. But, once the Zionists took over the Federal Reserve, they took over everything, every system, every institution. They have selectively, intentionally poisoned everything, right? So all of our crops have herbicides and pesticides, hormones and genetics, all kinds of stuff put into them. All of our animals, we've got fake meat, we've got lab-grown stuff. They've taken nutrition out of stuff. They've added all this stuff. If you look at all the processed food products, a list of ingredients today compared to a list of ingredients of the same products from the 60s and 70s, it went from like 5 ingredients to like 100.
Or even compared to the European Union version of the foods, right?
Yeah.
With the food dyes and the preservatives.
100%, man. But this all comes together. And so, they've taken over food. They've taken over the water system. They put fluoride in all of our water. Our water's full of estrogen. It's turning frogs fucking gay. Changing their sex.
It is. That was sounding crazy when he said it, and it's 100% true.
It's true, right? So they've got the water. They've already taken over the food. Every American, majority of America, 98% of America, I believe, relies on a grocery store to have groceries in there all the time, okay? We all completely rely on an electric grid. Most Americans don't know what it's like to be hot or to be cold or for the fridge to not work. They don't know how to keep food fresh. They don't know how to kill animals. They don't know how to skin meat. There's not enough animals even left for people to hunt and live off of. There's not enough farmlands. They're all controlled, right? So
there's 3 meat processors in the country, all owned by China, right? There's only 3 slaughterhouses.
We are completely and totally screwed. And I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm saying there's a chance we could fight, but we would have to completely rebuild the system even if we won. But this is how they're going to win.
That's what I'm struggling with right now is, like, you and I were talking about it. We're doing the right thing. We're shining a light on it. We're, willing to do whatever's necessary. But what is that? And that's what I can't get to is, like, how do we roll this back? How do we undo this at this point?
It can be destroyed. But here's the other thing, man. And just a couple more points on add to that. The power grid is fragile. It can be hacked. Now, the other thing that we completely are dependent on for our banking, for our finances, for transaction, communication, our entire life, everything now runs through our cell phone. The Wi-Fi goes out, the cell phone towers goes out. That creates chaos, panic in and of itself because the system we all rely on for most everything is gone. So I'm not worried about bombs and bullets. No country has to come over here and attack us anymore. What they could do is turn the power off, shut the internet off, and we're going to kill our fucking selves. We're going to kill each other. And if they can create enough chaos where at some point it gets so bad, there's so many people dying of starvation from disease. There's so many bad things happening. China could do it. Russia could do it. A hacker group from Iran can shut America down. We are so dependent on the system, and this is intentional. They created the system and slowly took our rights, our liberties, and our abilities away. This didn't start fucking 10 years ago. This started in 1913. Every single system, from our education to our power to the internet to the communications to our food, our farmlands, all of it has been marginalized and controlled, bought up, monopolized, poisoned, and tainted. They're attacking our hormones. They're attacking everything. Now you got the frequencies. We're all full of nanobots now that have been injected through the vaccines and all this kind of crap. And now you have Trump just signing the bill or trying to pass a bill of 6G. 6G will put Wi-Fi frequencies through your body, right? So these are not conspiracies. These are all realities. So my point is, man, the most dangerous dude in the world is a dad whose kids are hungry, right? And so some system gets turned off or a chain reaction happens, it's going to turn in, and it could turn into absolute chaos. And most of America at this point, especially younger generations, once they're without Wi-Fi or once they're hot or once they're cold, they will bend the knee and be begging the government to save them. And that's why we're fucked, because it's not that we don't have men who can fight. It's not that we don't have guns. We use them on each other. But the majority of America is so dependent on these systems. It has no clue what life is like without them, nor how a clue to survive without them, that the second the systems are shut off or temporarily delayed or destroyed, we will beg for a government to save us. And we will comply collectively to anything. And then those of us who don't want to comply, be part of the system, we're going to have to either live out of the system. And now you're talking end times prophecy, mark of the beast. How are they going to make people take the beast? Because you're not going to be able to eat You're not going to have clean water to drink. You're not going to be able to live in the system. And we are already at the level of complete and total dependency.
Yeah, if you
America
take away your
needs to
ability
wake
to
up to
trade and barter and actually buy food, forget about it whether there's food on the shelves or not, right? Let's
Mhm.
assume there's still food on the shelves. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure you've had a where you've lost your wallet or lost your credit cards, and you have it takes time to imagine if they
What do you
just shut
do?
you all off, right? And
Yeah.
then what are you going to do? And you got to feed your kids, so your ideologies or your principles go out the window real quick when your daughter's starving.
Oh,
Right?
100%, brother.
So you're 100%
1,000%.
right, but it's
And that's the
fucking
message I'm
depressing.
trying to get to people to start thinking about, right? And so that's what I tell everybody. Try to have a stockpile of perishable food. Try to get things to, purify water. Have a stockpile of water, ways to purify it. If you're dependent on medicine or someone in your family is, have that medicine built up, right? Have the ability, have the way to be able to take care of your family if the power's out for 2 weeks or a month. Because right now, you should even have it for a storm or something, right? But who knows what can happen as this war goes? And I think there could be a lull where Trump gets to be a hero, and
Well,
he's
I
got to
think you're
be a
right. I think
hero
he's going to pull a
to
mission
take us.
accomplished, where
Mm-hmm.
they've taken enough of the heads off and destroyed enough infrastructure
Yeah.
that we just leave behind another Afghanistan and Iraq, and who gives it? And there's a vacuum, but it's going to take them a long time to rebuild that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's most likely that, or there's so
Mm-hmm.
much damage to Tel Aviv. And potentially a false flag attack somewhere in Jerusalem on a holy site. I think that's
Or here.
right? I think that Israel's going to realize that that's the only way to get anybody in their corner is to make Americans scared, right? And or Christians to feel like this is a holy war that they need to join. So I'm worried
100%.
that they're going to launch a nuke. I'm worried that Israel's going to be, because the Iron Dome is useless at this point. They've overwhelmed it with drones. We're shooting $1.5 million missiles at $30,000 drones, and of course there's no news, there's no media coming out of Israel because it's 5 years in prison if you even post a video.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that Tel Aviv and potentially Jerusalem next is getting leveled, and I don't think Bibi's above launching a strategic nuke at Tehran. And
Right.
then you have China reacting, you have Russia reacting, you have potentially us reacting. So it's scary, man. It's super super scary times.
No, you're right. You're right, man. But here's the good thing, right? Is at least for me, I know we have different views on faith, but I just have faith, and I have a lot of things that have happened in my life to solidify that. And I want to walk away from it. But I believe Jesus wins, man. I believe good will win in the end. But I think it's going to suck. It's going to suck a lot until we do. And
I don't disagree
with
with you
me.
at all. I believe that in the end, but between now and when that is, there's going to be a lot of hell for us and our kids in the interim.
And I think a lot of Americans have this escapism, mentality for rapture and all that. There's really no biblical precedent for rapture. It's more of a Protestant post-scroll Bible thing as well. Like all these Christians believe, oh, we're just going to be taken out of here. I don't got to go through this shit. I'm just going to be taken out of here. I'm going to be raptured. Well, it's like, I bet you those Christian Bolsheviks is there being slaughtered in gulags, raped, tortured, murdered, torn apart, shot in the back of the head. Their children being raped and burned at the stake. I bet they thought Jesus was about to rapture them too. My point is you can't just sit around and let evil take hold and hope that Jesus is just going to come save you. Jesus gave you arms, he gave you legs, he gave you a brain, he gave you the ability to fight, he gave you the ability to think for yourself. He gave us the ability, the creation, the ability to fight, to do the right thing, to stand up for ourselves. And escapism is not the answer right now. So I pray that Americans start really thinking for themselves. Wake up, learn the truth, and stop blindly supporting false idols. Because it says the Bible warns over and over again about idolatry. And a lot of Christian conservatives are treating Trump like an idol, like he's a god,
dude.
like he can do no wrong, no matter what he says. And it's disgusting. The great deception, they're going to turn the Antichrist into an idol, right? Or the Jewish Messiah into an idol, the Savior, right? And Christians need to be careful. A lot of Christians like to say they follow Jesus. They don't know the first thing what that means, because Jesus was they called him the heretic because he
was
stood
flipping
up
over
against
tables,
you. Right.
right?
Yeah, Christianity's lost its way. You got a bunch of skinny jean, gel-haired pastors trying to be cool and hip, never preaching anything controversial. Christianity is just led by a bunch of pussies. Most Christians are a bunch of pussies, and most Christian pastors are either Zionists or pussies. And that's just true. Jesus wasn't a pussy.
Nope.
Jesus stood up. He fought. He got tortured and crucified to death. Do you think most of these Christian pastors that you see on the stage talking about Jesus and love and hugs,
brother.
they got an alternative band behind them? No, they're cashing checks. Those dudes wouldn't die or fight for shit. They don't know the first thing about the gospel or really understand what Jesus did or how he lived. And so, one of the things I'm going to be.
Man. My parents were big on the prosperity gospel. Didn't put me through college, but sure as hell gave Kenneth Copeland hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Jesus make it rain money. Oh,
right.
Give me a private jet.
Jesus said, I need a new jet. I need a new jet from oh, dude, it's
I can't be on a plane with all these demons. I need my own jet. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. And it's like, yeah. I mean, God, that guy. But there's so many of them, and there's so many Americans to see that just haven't even opened their Bible. They let some asshole on stage take their money and tell them what the Bible says, right?
Yep.
It's just cults, man. They're just cults. And so I think the death of Charlie Kirk did a lot of things. It was a great awakening to evil, what's happening in the world, and it also, most importantly, was a great awakening. A lot of people started to go to church again, tried to find Jesus again, started to try to understand that, hey, if the world's this evil, if everyone's pedophiles, if they're assassinating people, taking over the world, well, then there's got to be good too.
But now you have TP USA is full on Zionist. All the money Charlie turned down, they took in. Erica Kirk might be the most evil person on planet Earth in my estimation.
Oh God, I think she's like the female Antichrist. I mean, I don't know. The Bible even talks about the Antichrist sex, but she'd be she's in top 5 for me right now. Her and Jared Kushner and Vance and all those guys, because nothing about how they got to where they are makes any sense.
She was in CIA films, in training videos. She's they tried producing some movie about this. Dude, the night before, I'm pretty sure that Charlie was going to divorce her.
No, he was. I've confirmed that from people very close to him that Charlie was trying to leave her, and that was a part of it. So I think he woke up to who he was. Now, I'm not going to say certain things. I'm going to tell you my opinion is that, yes, Charlie was leaving her, and I don't think those kids are his. I know for sure one of those kids aren't his. And I think he just found out that she was a whore. I mean,
dude, she claimed she didn't date for 5 years, and she
didn't drink. She's this good little Christian girl, and it's like, look, here's the thing, man. I found Jesus, after I lost my sister. I wasn't a good Christian, man. After I lost my sister, I was doing drugs and drinking and depressed and like in a spiral, right? And then, after I've fallen so many times, but the only thing for me is following Jesus doesn't mean you're perfect. If you look at the disciples, man, most of the disciples had a horrible past, murderers and all these kind of things, right? But I believe in order to be able to follow Jesus, for me, to be a good man, and is that you've got to have sinned. You have to know how the devil's going to come at you. You have to know what your vices are, your flaws are, what your mistakes are. And trust me, I've made more mistakes than most. But after Charlie died, that was really I had a girl named Courtney Kathleen who did a deliverance prayer over Charlie, and James O'Keefe and Chad Prather and so many other guys who are doing awesome stuff in our life. She came to Nashville. She did a prayer over me for about 3 hours. It was the most powerful thing I've ever experienced in my life. I literally felt, and people can call me crazy if they want. This is what solidified my faith in God. This was early 2025. And following Jesus, I watched a demon get ripped off of me. I watched it happen with my own 2 eyes, and then and felt it happen. I'm not even kidding, brother. And this was from prayer. And multiple people, I'm not going to say names, that in my life have experienced this with her and other people. And after that day, I'm not kidding, like for about a month, everyone who saw me was like, Matt, you don't look like the same person. The girl I was dating at the time, I walked into her work that day and she dropped the thing she had in her hand. This is like no joke, man, this is spiritual warfare. And I cannot tell you, I've had my experience. Everybody has to have their own. I'm not here to be a preacher. I'm just telling you my story. And, when I Then after they killed Charlie, you know, I had a decent following because I ran those human trafficking or started Operation Light Shine and then ran the Sentinel Foundation. But after Charlie, I just started telling the truth and the pieces started coming together. You know, I'm not saying God told me what to say. I'm just saying the pieces started to come together. And, you know, my life, my experience, my history, my background, my studies, just how I see things. And I just started telling the truth, man. And you know, sharing what I know, and it's, you know, the following kind of blew up. I'm shadow banned more than almost any account on fucking X
Yeah, I'm
and
surprised you got as big
Instagram.
as you have, as fast as you have, because for that. I mean, that's crazy that
Yeah.
you've been able to cut through. But I think authenticity comes through, right? You can tell 100% that you're not a guy that's just a grifter trying to grab at the silver, the you know, the ring or whatever. You know, you can tell it comes from a place of honesty and authenticity, and I think that's
Yeah.
super important. There's so many fake owned, you know, most of these podcasters and whatever, they're just, it's complete bullshit. But a lot of it's because they're beholden to their sponsors. They're beholden to, you and I have talked about this offline.
And they're all Jewish. I mean,
Yeah,
most of
right.
them, they're Jewish. I mean, if you look into most of the big podcasts, majority of the companies that sponsor them and fund them are, you know, Zionists. They're Jews.
Yeah.
And it's not a conspiracy. Look into it. It's kind of crazy. Most people should look at who's paying your podcaster's bills. You know, and who owns the companies that are advertising on there, and that'll tell you what they can and can't say, and what truth they might not be telling you. You know, and so you know, I'm launching my podcast too. We shoot our, you know, pilot this weekend, and you know, I've thought seriously about that because I'm like, man, how bad is this going to f my life up? Right? You know, like, is this going to, how bad is this going to hurt me financially? I'm probably never going to be employable, you know, and some, you know, corporate whatever job again, you know, and so, you know, I've thought of different ways to try to monetize the platform. If I'm going to keep telling the truth, I've got to be able to pay my bills. I got kids and stuff, you know. So, but you know, you know, there's very real thoughts. But I just feel so called, compelled, driven to tell the truth, whatever you want to call it, and comfortable in that I'm just going to have faith that God will provide, that things are going to work out, and I'm just going to send it, man, because you know, at the end of the day, I don't believe you know, I don't believe we're ever in a time, you know, you never know when you're going to die, but I don't believe we're in times where you're going to get the truth from the mainstream or even social media that much longer either. Because I'm one fucking, you know, Instagram decision person deleting my profile away.
I've had mine
You
deleted
know?
twice, my Instagram twice,
Yeah.
just because of my name, for God's sakes. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't need a reason. They don't need anything. They won't even respond to you. Just, sorry,
100%.
see you later. Yeah,
100%.
Demonetize
So
it.
it's,
Even if you build a huge following in YouTube and TikTok and whatever, you can be
Mhm.
demonetized like that.
but I think what you and I have in common is just an inability to sit back and just be quiet. You know, like
100%.
I just can't do it. People tell me all the time, I mean, do you want to argue all the time? Why can't you just go along? You know, just I don't know, man. I just don't have that ability. You know, I've always felt like if something's wrong or not, I gotta at least say something. Or if somebody's you know, an example being like that guy that got killed by ICE. Like, if I mean, he was a protester and whatever. But thinking like I'm always strapped, right? I'm always armed. If I'd been walking down the street and some dude threw a woman on the ground, I would have stepped in and tried to pick her up. You know, it's just that I just have an inability to not take action in some way, shape, or form. You know, so
No, yeah, I hear you.
it's
I
but
hear you, man.
you know, we're gonna take some slings and some arrows for it. You know, but it's the only way I know, and it's obviously with you too. And the world needs us, not to pat ourselves on the back, but if everybody did what everybody else is doing and just go along and follow the leader, you know, nothing would ever change. So,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
let's try to. I want to pivot a little bit back
Yeah.
to your experience in the CIA, because as you said early on, they control everything, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
that the CIA does not have their fingers in, and they operate essentially in complete secrecy more so than really any other organization on the planet besides Mossad. They just don't care. Mossad will blow up
Mhm.
a whole neighborhood and brag about it. They really
Well,
don't care.
they own everything and they know they won't get in trouble.
Exactly.
You know?
IC's the International Criminal Court. Who fucking cares? So
No.
what? And I know obviously a lot of shit's classified and you can't speak to some stuff, but
Mhm.
you know, of the stuff that was revealed to you, or the stuff that I shouldn't say revealed because that could be classified, but in your personal opinion, are aliens non-human intelligence, UFOs. Do those really exist? Are they underground? Are they buried? Have you come across anything like that?
Yeah, all right. Let me
Well,
tread
again,
on
this is
this
just
one.
this is hearsay. This is what you've heard around the campfire. I'm not
Yeah,
saying that you.
I've heard things, right?
Yeah, I've heard.
Okay.
Yeah, just heard.
All right. Okay. So, um, you know, aliens are not real, and there's nothing from outer space coming into the United States, or excuse me, the world. It's just not happening. Um, they live below us. And, Tim Burchett has multiple times gone on shows and talked about this stuff, about how we've tracked their craft moving hundreds of miles an hour through the
Underwater.
water.
Yep.
And then, almost all the alien abductions and alien sites come near bodies of water, right? And so there's always some water or some pathway into the earth near where their craft come from. So, you know, I'll say this. I have a buddy, TW Mock. He went on the Chad Robichaux show not too long ago. And he got called on an operation where there's these craft and these beings under a monastery in another country. I don't know how many. I haven't watched the whole episode
The
yet.
Mexico one where they
I
found
know
the two
I know the
skeletons?
story intimately because he's a very good friend of mine.
Are you
Right,
talking
but his
about the
name's
one in
TW.
Mexico where they found the bodies underneath the?
That's the one. That's
I
the
saw
one.
that podcast, dude. That was bananas. And they're
Yeah.
going
So
back, I
TW is a
guess.
good. Yeah, he's one of the most unique men you'll ever meet in your life. He's got, so good friends. TW and I do a lot of things together, and you know, he found Nephilim under that monastery. I think he showed the pictures on the podcast that he has. So if you go back into the Bible, Book of Enoch, and these stories, right? Then you even find this in Greek mythology, Roman mythology. It talks about gods, right? Like the sons of God. And there's all these gods. There's gods for war, gods for love, gods for all these things, right? And, if you look at Enoch, it talks about the 200 people, the watchers, the sons of God being sent to earth, angels, whatever you call. Well, they became the fallen. They became the fallen because they were teaching man things man wasn't supposed to know, magic and mysticism, all the witchcraft, whatever you want to call it.
And breeding with women.
Right, and breeding with women, right? So if you look at Greek mythology, Roman mythology too, they discuss this stuff. But this is also in China. This is also throughout South America. These demigods, right? Like Achilles.
We just lost your video.
Oh, sorry. I guess. Oh. And I just shut the bar. My bad. I had no idea. All right. So, okay.
We might have to edit some stuff out. You might not want it anyway, so not a big deal. So back to the Nephilim and the.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, man. So this there was a Mexican monastery, Catholic monastery in Mexico, and there was they had been built on top of something they were trying to hide, and so before the TW got there, he had no idea what to expect, right? He was sent there
because it was a private contract, right? As I remember.
Yeah. He owns a global logistics company, a bunch of cargo planes, a bunch of things. We've done a lot of crazy things together around the world, charity, human trafficking, whatever you want to call it. Lots of other stuff, right? And this wasn't a government contract; it was a corporation that hired him to do this. So the government's already got all this shit, right? They've had this stuff for a long time. But I'm just going to say this: there were things that weren't made by people in there, and 2 dead Nephilim bodies, mummified.
Yeah,
and on the walls, there were hieroglyphics of these things on top of the Aztec pyramids. Those little pyramids with the steps, laying people open. So how we were taught that the Aztecs were sacrificing people for, the water, the rain. No, man. Now this was these Nephilim. They've so. Here's the deal, man. If you look at the Book of Enoch, Roman mythology, Greek eschatology, or Greek mythology, you have the gods, the demigods, and there's hundreds of them, right? There's 200 gods that were sent to Earth, and the Watchers, right, or the Watchers, and for the Book of Enoch, and then they started having sex with the daughters of men, and they were making the Nephilim, right? The hybrids, the god-people hybrids. That's just what Roman and Greek mythology talked about, like Achilles, right? He was a god, but a demigod, right? Yeah, exactly. And but Achilles had the Achilles heel because he was man, so there's a way he could be hurt and a way he could die, right? So the government has. Now, I was never on these projects. I've just known people that were on these projects that I trust. Smithsonian, the Vatican, U.S. government, they have been doing everything they can to hide these Nephilim, these giant skeletons, these bones, made up
from
all
the
the
Grand
bullshit about the
Canyon
dino.
that came out of the Grand Canyon in the Smithsonian.
90% of the Grand Canyon, you get shot if you get near
Yeah.
it. Why? They're hiding the truth. Because when you look at the Bible is batting 1,000 on history right now, at least events from the flood to whatever. We have not been able to prove anything wrong that the Bible says, at least part of history goes. Right now, I'm not saying belief, but like history in the story, they haven't been able to prove any of that wrong. I mean, even with the Shroud of Turin from Jesus, they found the Shroud of Turin and the blood's still alive. And it only had 23 or 24 chromosomes. So basically, it was like a person that didn't have a father, right? That's not possible, right? So there's so many things that have just, the Bible's batting 1,000 on history, right? Everything they've dug up coincides with the Bible. And I've studied this for about 20 years. I can't find anything where the Bible is wrong, at least in the historical record, right? So anyways, with this Nephilim stuff, what they told me is that these Nephilim, there's layers, because the demons now are the fallen. They were cast away from God because of what they did. Lucifer, the ringleader, right? But there's all these other demons, these gods, and then there's the Nephilim. So I don't know the breakdown exactly. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I just know it's real. I've seen it, and I'll leave it at that. And I've seen the hieroglyphics and I've seen the tech. So my point is, everything's being hidden from us, right? And it's hidden in plain sight. And they talk about evolution. They've never been able to prove evolution for people, right? There's similar DNA and there's similar
huge gaps in the evolution where there was definitely some playing with our genetics. There was something happened.
Right. Well, who would do that? A creator, right? The way it was explained to me by somebody really smart at this place, that I trust him a lot. I'm not going to say his name, but the way I say it to people, it makes sense. When the Bible talks about God taking the rib out of Adam and creating Eve, that's not the rib. It's the DNA, right? So what he had made a whole, he took half and made a woman. So when you have sex, you're bringing that together, right? That relationship, that energy, that frequency. Because DNA makes your
words
physical.
To describe it. That's what I feel like a lot of the problems with the biblical stories are in like the timelines being off, certain things being off, is they didn't have a way to express that a lot of these things, right? They didn't have the technology or the understanding of genetics, and so they expressed it in the best way that they could, and then it's been retranslated and changed and
1,000%.
over time. But the core, the seed of it, a lot of the stories are mythological in that they've been turned into stories. But the seed of the story is what I look at, right? And I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Is that the basis of a lot of this has been spun different ways, but
100%.
The core of it.
Yeah, man. I mean, they were just writing about what they saw, right? What they were told, or how it was perceived. And so the way it's explained to me, your DNA makes you physical, right? It creates you, makes you your unique you, made in the image of God or the Creator, right? And then also your DNA attaches your soul, your spirit, whatever's inside of you, your consciousness, however you want to describe that, right? So, they have that whole thing about 6 ounces or whatever you lose when you die.
Oh,
right? Your soul leaves the body immediately.
21 grams, yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah, grams, ounces. I don't know. I smoked a lot of weed in college, but man, the point is that but that also creates your energy, your vibration, because everything is a frequency, right? My table that my computer sitting is on frequency. My phone's a frequency, right? So that DNA is our frequency. It's our existence. It's how we look. It's how we're perceived. It's our energy. It's everything. So most of the Bible, when you talk about Nephilim, God got mad. They were having sex with women and create new species and Nephilim and hybrids and stuff. He's like, nope, that's wrong. Well, that was what the flood was for. And they've already found proof of the worldwide flood, Noah's flood. They're like, oh, when? So the flood was to wipe out the Nephilim and, wipe out what they had done. Well, man, they're up to it again. If you look at Epstein's Island, Synagogue of Satan, what was he doing? He was messing with DNA. He was trying to create super race. Yeah, make more Epsteins, like super Epsteins, right? A lot of pictures of Epstein with, what's that D-bag in New York, the mayor? Mamdani,
yeah.
Mamdani and his mom with Epstein, right? I wonder who his dad is, Epstein was trying to get everyone pregnant. right? So and then
Look
why
at
did
Chester
Epstein?
Bennington and Chris Cornell and those
Mhm.
guys that were about to expose pedophilia.
100%. Well, man, it's they all come from those bloodlines, man. I mean, most presidents are related and are cousins, even
Yep.
Obama, right? To the Bushes, right? So, man, I mean, it's one thing to say it's conspiracy, but there's so much evidence. It's like it's not a conspiracy; it's just the reality, right? It's just the way it
just
is.
as much a reality as COVID coming from a lab. It's
100%, man.
whatever you
And
want.
so,
It's a fact at this point.
yeah. And I think I don't know. There were two CIA programs that I think are very important for people to look up, research, and know for the times we're living in. One is MK Ultra and the mind control. That program didn't stop existing; they just changed the name. Once they declassified something and they wanted to continue, just change the name.
Montauk Project.
And yeah, 100%. But then Project Bluebeam.
Yep.
Which is, and this is part of the Great Deception, that to destroy the belief in God and Jesus' creation, and that humans were created, all that, and angels and demons. The Great Deception is to tell people that there's these people, this life is from outer space. They're going to use technology, they're going to use all kinds of things to accomplish this Great Deception. And that's Project Bluebeam is part of that. That's part of the rise of the Antichrist. That's part of all the fun shit we have coming in our life.
It's to scare us into, similar to 9/11 with the Patriot Act, is
100%.
you give up liberties out of fear. And I'm a big believer in what Benjamin Franklin says. Any man willing to give up liberty for safety deserves neither. And that's what we're seeing in real time. Is they're trying to scare us into the fact that we need Big Daddy government to protect us from the aliens or protect us from the crazy Muslims, and it's all fear-based, man. And too many people are just willing to say, "Oh, wow, even if this might be true, that we need them to do this to protect us," and that's winning right now. I mean, as far as people just going along, and even if they don't believe it, they don't say anything. They just fucking sit there and go, "Okay."
The problem is, people would believe it if they were taught that it was true, because they weren't taught that it was true. Because they weren't educated about it, because they were told this is true, this is science, this is reality, this, man evolved from this, and these are dinosaurs. You're brainwashed your entire life to believe this false narrative. There's really not a whole lot of evidence even for dinosaurs, their bones, right? That's like a lot of them are manufactured, made up things, and putting different creatures and things together. And one conspiracy, I have no proof of this one, is that they've taken a lot of the Nephilim bones and turned it into dinosaurs. And hidden them within the Smithsonian and all these things by changing the bones. I mean, because if you look, the Smithsonian and the Vatican control almost all museums, education institutions, and universities. I mean, it's weird how
in that
it works.
regard, I go back. I don't think the Earth is 6,000 years old, per the biblical math. But again, I go back to during that time, they didn't understand the scope in timelines, and they started with what they could understand and the names that they had. I mean, you look at the Sumerian kings list, right, where guys were they were living 80,000 years or whatever. So again, I feel like the Bible, it's seeds of truth that have been corrupted through interpretation and man over time. So again, I don't the whole dinosaur thing. There's definitely huge gaps in the fossil record, and I do believe the Earth is older than 6,000 years, like I said. But again, it's seeds of truth, and we just got to be able to parse out and realize that we can't let them continue to spin things to divide us, and that's what they're doing. We just all, because again, like we've talked about, we're never going to have a point where we all agree on every interpretation of this or that. But what we can agree on the core principles, though, of there is no superior race that should rule the world. There is no there is no chosen people. We're all humans, and that's really the only thing left to unite under because of how sectarian it is. But
and that's why they're trying to kill us all, man, and control us and silence us and marginalize us, because they have the power. They have the power right now, man. It just is the reality. So, I've thought long and hard about how to defeat them, and I'm almost at the point where I'm saying, like, there's no way to defeat the system, right? Maybe there's going to be some opportunity, where we all get to fight, but I also know that they want us to fight. and they want us to revolt because that's how they bring control. Order through chaos is a model of masonry. Order from chaos, excuse me. So, they want chaos. And trust me, man, this has been going on for generations. These plans, these processes, these systems. Now you got the AI, Palantir, all these flock cameras, CBDC. They're going to make the attempt, and I think they don't think they're going to lose, to control us and make us live in some digitized, globalized police state. That's common. That's what they want.
They have everything they need already. Wait till quantum AI takes over, right? And like I talked about yesterday, once you control the information, and like we talked about with AI, dude, if they can control what information you get, and everything ends up being dependent on AI, and they put the guardrails on, and they decide what information is disseminated, that's all they need, man. And then you got surveillance with Flock and with Ring doorbells and with Palantir, and they're tracking all of our movements. They're probably listening to this conversation right now in real time. I mean,
for sure.
There's no hiding from it. So we agree. It's scary, man. It's really, really scary because there's no obvious way to fix this.
Well, and I mean, and what keeps me not scared is just my faith in Jesus, man. To be honest, I'm like, hey, if I believe in Jesus, then I believe in the things and the prophecy. And I've just seen somebody writing on the wall, well, these people believe in the devil so much. They're carrying out the devil's destiny. They're doing all the things that the Bible says will happen. They're doing it all. They're literally doing it. So if they're doing it, they're manifesting, they're creating it, then, maybe this Jesus guy isn't so wrong after all, right? And that there is good and that there is this higher power. But, they're not choosing Islam. They're not choosing whatever. They're choosing the biblical version of manifest destiny, God versus the devil, the synagogue of Satan, ushering in the false Messiah. And what's interesting is Christians and Muslims have very similar beliefs when it comes to in the end times. Christians believe Jesus is the Son of God, and he returns as the Son of God with a sword and a robe dipped in blood. Then there's the judgment, and then, he kills the Antichrist, and, 1,000 years peace on earth. Well, Muslims believe a very similar thing. They believe that Jesus is not the Son of God. He's the second highest prophet. Yep. They believe that Jesus is sent back as a man with powers from God, protection from God, and he kills the Antichrist, right? So Christians and Muslims both believe Jesus returns and kills the Antichrist, just two different, character stories, right? Backgrounds. And then Muslims believe that he does, I think it's 6 other end times tasks. And then he passes away as a mortal man and is buried in Mecca, I believe, or not Mecca, wherever Muhammad's buried. They believe he's buried next to Muhammad, right? And the 2 highest prophets, the men who did God's work, are buried there. And then, they have a similar kind of version of, what happens after that. So Christians and Muslims both believe in Jesus, Son of God, second highest prophet. These both held in a very high regard. They both have the same story of how
Muslims even revered
100%. Yeah. Right. And that's why the Jews are always trying to get Christian and Muslims to fight. Because here's the thing, even though we don't agree completely, Christians and Muslims get along great, right? And historically, Christians and Muslims have gotten along fine. The Crusades were all started by Jewish bullshit, right? Everything is always started by Jerusalem and Jewish bullshit.
The original bank was the Knights Templar, right? I mean, they're the
100%. And we know they weren't good dudes. They were pretending to be Christians, but they weren't. They were doing all kinds of Kabbalah shit, So and that's why they got persecuted, just because they were doing that, the Kabbalah stuff. And everybody tries to say that the Catholic Church went after them pretty hard, because the Catholic Church in those days,
a bunch of them, but a bunch of them escaped and took a lot of relics with them. So
100%. The Catholic Church didn't really truly get perverted until the European banking system took over. They've never been perfect. They've done a lot of effed up stuff, but the Catholic Church really got perverted and went full scale into not being good, and the pedophilia and all the things once the Rothschild banking system took hold of the Vatican. It's the main funder of the Vatican. The main banker of the Vatican is the Rothschild banking system. So, it's people just don't see the truth because they just that you're taught the Pope is the word of God, on earth. You're taught, you hear that, and you hear that in church, you hear that as a kid. And if you start to question that, you feel doubts, you feel like you're going against God, you feel like you're being a heretic. And it's like guilt and fear are powerful drugs, man. And that's why how someone is educated, what knowledge that they're raised in, what they're taught is so crucial. It is.
But a lot of people that have been pushed out of the church, like myself, it's the hypocrisy, right? It's the fact that they claim to be, to follow Jesus's example, and they're the furthest thing from it. The whole eye of the
Well,
needle with the rich man, and it's the today's version of Christianity, or the prosperity gospel and all that bullshit. It's been hijacked, just like Judaism was hijacked to a degree.
yeah.
It's they've taken something good and turned it into a control mechanism, and it's again, I grew up in it. I've actually read the Bible cover to cover. I was in junior Bible quiz as a kid, where we go church to church and have Bible quiz stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
it's all been bastardized, man. The modern versions
You're
of
right.
almost everything is bullshit, and it's all a control mechanism. And I'm glad to talk to Christians like you that are the true Christians in my estimation, because you stick to the core principles of Jesus, and
Right.
that just doesn't exist for the most part anymore. It's all money and control.
Well, you're starting to see a great awakening, I think, with that. I do a lot with people in the National Prayer Breakfast, and their big thing now is just pushing the gospel and the story of Jesus and living like Jesus, right? And getting back to those roots, because there's so much dogma, control, denominations, manipulation, perversion, misutilization of God's word that's going on in the church, and it's pushed a lot of Christians away. And if you just look at Jesus, right, and you look at his life, if you're a Christian, you believe Jesus died on the cross, rose again, and through that, we have the ability to be forgiven. And they went from the Jews who turned against Jesus, who turned against God, who started worshiping false idols, lost their chosen people status, and now anyone who follows Jesus, it has the chance at redemption, right, and salvation. And so when you look at this Jesus's life and his story, all Jesus did was take care of people, help people, fight demons, cast out demons, heal the sick. He, got down on where people were at, like with the prostitute. He got down on the floor with her, so to speak. And he wasn't prostituting with her. He was getting on her level so he could reach her to bring her up to his. And, so it's the story of Jesus is also fighting. He spoke out. He was in direct confrontation with the Pharisees, the entire gospel, right? To preach, speaking out against their practices, their worship of false idols, the money in the church, all the different things, flipping the tables, whipping the people. Well, some people say he didn't, who knows? But I like to think he did.
He was killed by the
Some people,
Sanhedrin. He was killed by the people he was standing up to.
yeah,
The
well,
Romans get some of the
100%.
blame, obviously, but the
Right.
one thing that I can't get on
Mhm.
board with
Mhm.
Christianity
Mhm.
is I don't believe everybody's redeemable. I don't think
Well,
pedophiles are redeemable. I don't think
well, no,
that
I know what you mean there. I know what you mean.
that's tough for me to the thought that if there is a heaven and I go there, or that every pedophile that found God in prison, or that even if they truly did confess and they really were sorry, I don't feel like pedophiles is a
Well,
redeemable thing. I think those guys should
Well,
be
the
put to a wood
concept
chipper.
of forgiveness in the Bible is not just you pray, confess, and you're forgiven, right? That's not how forgiveness works. There's repentance that goes in with that. So it is the stopping of that behavior, removing that sin, or whatever that is, from your life and changing. And yeah, man, that's so to me, there's a reason that Satanists, the radical Jewish, belief in the Talmud Kabbalah, why they rape children, why they sacrifice children, and it's because a child is innocent. A child is the closest thing to God, right? So the innocent child is the closest thing to the Creator on earth, right? Made in His image. So to be the most evil, right, you have to destroy the thing that's closest and most innocent and most pure. You have to harm it. You have to torture. You have to kill it. And then, the adrenochrome that's released in their blood, that's how they maintain their youth. That's also how they, as a drug, use it to cross a dimension, drug dimensions, and then interact with evil spirits and do the rituals and the magic. And then that's how they're also given the power by the demonic. Because in the Bible, Lucifer is the prince of this earth. And even Jesus had to spend 40 days and 40 nights in the desert with the devil, and he was offering Jesus powers and principalities and kingdoms and control of man on the earth. How could the devil offer that if it wasn't his to give? Because he was sent here initially as a watcher. So Jesus is coming back to kill the devil, to kill Lucifer, to kill the Antichrist, to destroy his sons, right? To destroy his sons who perverted and controlled the earth. That's the story, right? And so so when you look at that whole process, it's like, and the world is controlled by the devil, right? Everything is being destroyed. Everyone's constantly being attacked. Everyone's constantly being manipulated or lied to, or the whispers. And so the people that are in power, if Lucifer was offering Jesus kingdoms, powers, principalities, well, then think about who are all these people that are in charge of these kingdoms. They probably have to make some compact, contract, sell their soul to the devil, and they're heavily influenced. All these leaders are probably constantly being attacked by Lucifer.
Look at the Epstein files and how they make fun of us, as Goyim, and they find it hilarious that we're we have to work jobs, we have to punch clock while they're manipulating the economy and arbitraging and doing all the things, controlling logistics, and they just think we're the dumb cattle that just have to go along with it, right? And they're right. That's the sad part, is in the current situation they're 100% correct.
But they're just puppets too. Like Trump's a puppet, Netanyahu's a puppet. Charlie Kirk talked about that. None of these political leaders, they're actors. They're playing a role. The last real president America had was JFK. After he died, the elections have been manipulated since they killed JFK. We haven't had a legitimate elected president by the American people since JFK was killed. In the story they told us was Trump.
You're still only given two choices that they've created, right? Even if the elections were legit and who we voted for ended up winning, at the end of the day, we don't pick those candidates. The RNC and the DNC, the two-party system, decide.
They're both funded by AIPAC.
Yeah,
they're both.
Yeah.
And so, it's one's pretending to save you, one's saying they're going to destroy you, and then they both but they create two idols for you to get behind. Yep. And then and then everybody's the Democrats. So it's like, well, the same people that funded that dude to get in office are the same people that were funding the guy that didn't win. And so it's like, politics is the WWE. It's bread and circuses. It's a distraction. It's just one more thing between the race wars, the sex wars, the religious wars, and the political wars to just keep us divided and fighting each other. Because as long as we're divided, as long as we're fighting each other, we're never going to look up at the puppet master, the people that are really our enemy, the world's enemy, the humanity's enemy. We're never going to look at it, man. And so it's all a game. Everything, all these systems, like, professional sports, we idolize, I don't, I'm way out of that headspace, but there's so many Americans that idolize athletes and spend hundreds of dollars. They're struggling to get by or barely saving anything, but they're buying a $450 football ticket and a jersey and going and cheering on some man that makes millions of dollars to catch a fucking ball. Meanwhile, their life's falling apart. Their retirement's falling apart. It's just bread and circuses. There's majority of American men know more about their football team than they know about Democrats or Republicans or politics or war or even the faith.
It's sad. Well, it's another distraction. Get your fantasy football team, and it's here. Let them eat cake, right? It's really that simple, man. And there's just all these lemmings that just go with the fucking flow. It's
manufactured bullshit. What happens if the owner sells the Dallas Cowboys? They're gone, right? So it's people have forgotten the things in life that truly matter. What really matters? What do you enjoy that's not in the system? And I'm not talking about you, like people, right? And people think about it. What do you enjoy that's not something they've created? You're watching their TV shows. You're watching their sports. You're playing their video games. What do you do in the real world that actually brings you fulfillment, enjoyment, is making you healthier? What are you doing to get out in the sun? What are you doing to exercise? What are you doing to take care of this body, right? Because if your body's weak, then your mind's weak. What are you doing to take care of your mind? Are you just sitting on the couch? And don't get me wrong, I like to watch a movie every once in a while, but I refuse to watch TV shows anymore. I will not watch TV.
I haven't watched regular TV in years now.
It's like people just they get so miserable. They live vicariously through television and through characters and through movie stars and through video game characters. They forget that you're the main character. You can go out and do all these things. You can go out and experience this life. And so I think people just get defeated, and it's like they just come home, they turn the TV on, and it's just show after show, and it's their routine, and they're just mindless minions. It's like the Lamborghini creator, or Ferrari, one of the two, had a quote, and he's like, why don't you make commercials, for Ferraris and Lamborghinis?
Our people don't watch TV.
Well, yeah, the type of people that can afford my cars don't watch TV. It's like people choose. A lot of people make a conscious decision to be a mindless lemming. have their head in the sand and be a part of that system and play fantasy football and jerk off an NFL player and, be their biggest fan and put another man's name on their shoulders. You know what I mean? Like, think about how big of a douchebag you are as a man for you to put a jersey on with another man's name on it.
Yep. Oh yeah,
right?
I think it's
guys
painting their faces and wearing.
Yeah,
like, dude, you're a fucking child.
like war. It's like, bro, you have just emasculated yourself into the biggest vagina on the earth. Right? You were a bigger vagina than your girlfriend has. Just with what you just did, being that fan, right? Idolizing another man. It's idolatry. What they've done is they've created a system. The Jews created and own all this shit. They've just created systems of idols and distractions and bread and circuses and have just given us heroes from movie stars to pop stars to professional athletes. And then they tell them what to say. And then our kids hear Taylor Swift say something, or, Selena Gomez, or, that Travis Kelce died. You're literally getting your life views, your values, your morals, and your principles from some star who's, probably been raped since they were a kid,
Yep.
or is getting raped right now. And it's just, it's mind-blowing to me what we've done. And I'm not Captain No Fun. I think a great film every once in a while is awesome. I think it's, go to a play but you know what? Like, every once in a while, like, it's okay to go to a movie and enjoy a movie with your girlfriend, because there's some movies that are great.
Watched Son of a Woman yesterday with my daughter. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's what I mean, man. Like, so I'm not Captain No Fun. I'm just saying it consumes most of Americans' life. It's all they do. They come home and they have their series of TV shows, their series of programming, their series of commercials. They're not living their life anymore. They go to work, they sit in an office for 8 hours or whatever the hell they do for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. They come home, they turn on the TV, or they get on the internet, or they play the video game. It's like you're willingly choosing to be in the Matrix and not be a person anymore. Go the fuck outside. Go on a walk. Go do something.
But I'm sure, like me, as much as, as well informed as you and I are, and as much as we study and watch try to gobble up as much, it can be depressing, right? There's times where I wish I was a guy that could just go sit there and watch bullshit all day long, because sometimes it's overwhelming, man. It's like, especially when you look around and guys like us are such a small percentage of the people. It's sometimes like, what? Fuck, I don't know. Sometimes there's nights where I shake my head. It's like, what the fuck are we?
That's when I pray, man. That's when I pray. And I'll tell you this, man. Yes, it can be defeating. I've had my moments where I'm just like, fuck, like, where's this go? But the thing that keeps me going, and as cheesy as this sounds, man, since I've started speaking out, on this and talking about it, every day, and it's hard. I don't, man, there's so many people that message me. I'm not trying to say that I kill waste. I only have so much time. I'm trying to be a dad. I'm trying to be, a good relationship for, who I'm dating, and, do my businesses and work, just my stuff, right? I got a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things. And then now I've chosen to make content and tell the truth. So that takes a little bit of time. I don't have time to read all these messages or watch every video somebody sends. I just don't have time. It's not rude. It's just, I just don't have time, right? And so, but almost every day I check my messages, and I scan through real quick. I try to respond to as many people as I can in 10 minutes. I allot 10 minutes to respond to people, right? And almost every day it's, man, Matt, you help me find Jesus again, or you woke me up to what's going on, or you got me reading the Bible again, or you got me, paying attention to stuff, or just doing something differently almost every day. And that's what inspires me and keeps me going, man, because it's like,
well, you inspired me, man. There's a guy sitting right here right now that your content was a big part of the reason that I decided to get off my ass, instead of just screaming into the wind, at least hopefully somebody I can help. But so it's working, I guess.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. But it's and there's been a lot of men who've inspired me. Charlie Kirk and his life, and how he woke up then and how he died. And and there's so many other guys who, on the internet that I like the stuff they put out, or their message, what they're doing. And I just think it's this collective. It's not just one person doing it. It's everyone taking a stand. It's a collective energy, right, that we all get. Like, even having this conversation right now, like you said, it's one more group of guys who are taking a stand and telling the truth. And then the next guy you're going to have on the podcast, and the next gal you have on. And then, and his mind starts up and we start telling the truth because everybody's like, well, Matt, when do we fight? And I was like, we don't fight until we're awake. We don't fight until we know what we're fighting for, until we collectively have enough people and enough energy and enough resolve. And we understand what we really believe in and what we really want, that's when you fight. And right now we're all waking up and everything's happening so fast. Every day it's a new thing. We just attacked Iran. We're not even done with that yet. Oil's going up. We don't know what's going to happen to the economy. And now we're like, oh, Cuba. And now Israel's talking about Turkey. And you're like, what the fuck?
Dude, Lindsey Graham
now we
is
got
the
sleeper
devil
cells.
incarnate, dude. Lindsey Graham might be the most evil man on the planet outside of Epstein. I mean, celebrating.
I rank evil. Well, I mean, I don't doubt for a second that Lindsey Graham was not possessed by a demon. You can just kind of see it in his eyes. Yeah. But also at the same time, think about what Lindsey Graham did to be that level. They've got something on him.
Oh, he's gay as hell.
And God knows what little kids that guy's done or what they have that he's scared
to death. That's how they keep people quiet. When you're all guilty of doing the most despicable things ever, no, you can't turn on each other, and so you have to double down, right? And so and that's where it comes from. That's why there's so few people saying, "Oh yeah, I was there and I saw this." Well, because so many were complicit. A lot of the girls that were involved ended up going and recruiting more girls, right? So it's
so they didn't have to get raped anymore. They had to put another girl there to get raped, and then she paid her dues, and then and that's how they did it. But it's just like presidents, they're not going to arrest another president because then what's the next president
going to happen when they leave office?
100%. The Senate, they're not going to take down someone on the right or the left because they're all doing the same shit, just different ways, different avenues, but they're all corrupt. They're all leave the Senate millionaires. Congress, same thing. They're not going to sacrifice Ilhan Omar or any of these people because whatever Ilhan's doing, her little fraud scheme, her little whatever, they've got something going too. You don't make $200,000 a year and leave with $20 million and not be complicit in a major amount of fraud, money laundering, or taking bribes.
NGOs. I mean, I'm sure you know firsthand with NGOs in these countries. It's just money laundering. That's all it is.
Well, brother, I'll tell you what, the NGO world is an evil space. I didn't believe, I'm never going to say I regret it. Because, man, I built something pretty amazing that's working today and still saving kids, the Operation Light Shine Task Force. And I didn't do it alone, but I started it. That wouldn't be here if I didn't decide to start it and do it. And for my sister, all that type of stuff. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. But once I got into that world and saw how self-serving it is and how it's all me, my organization, my mission, my donors, my money. Give me money. Give me money. I want to be the hero. Look at me. Look at me. And I try to never make it about me. Right? Like Tim Ballard, he tried to make himself the Jesus Christ of human trafficking, right? He was all over everything. Tim Ballard this, Tim Ballard that. Tim Ballard saves the kids. I never tried to make it about me. It was always about the police. It was always about the task force. It was always about the people, right? And I would have to go on the podcast and talk about it, but I was like, Matt Murphy's out there saving all the kids, And so it's like, but the NGO world, to raise money, you have to be the Tim Tebow, or you have to be the Tim Ballard, you have to be the whatever. And then, you have to play this game. Like Tim, I have nothing bad to say about Tim. I love Tim. I think he's an amazing human being. But Tim never addresses controversy. He will never speak out on anything controversial because he can't do anything to risk donors leaving the foundation or people attacking him or going against him because that hurts the money that they do good things to the kids with. So Matt Murphy and Tim Tebow being partner was not a good look because Matt Murphy's like, fuck you and don't cut that kid's dick off and that's wrong. And, I'll fight it. I'll toss it about it. I don't care. I am not a good leader of a charity because I can't only talk about that mission and keep my mouth shut. And I learned that the hard way. And I moved to Sentinel and same thing, charities are full of yes men and people who do what they're told. It puts the lotions on skin. They don't speak out. And yes, I'm not calling them pussies. I'm just saying if you can only focus on the mission of that charity and not talk about anything else and take the Jewish money and take the Christian money and take the Muslim money and not offend anybody, not poke any bears and only stay on your mission, you're great in a charity. If you can't do that, you are a charity's biggest nightmare and liability, right? And so, I resigned from Operation Light Shine in 2023, And 5 minutes later, they made me the president of Sentinel, and we did some great things at Sentinel. But the task force model I tried to build, it didn't work again. We State Attorney Bain, who I was partnered with in Florida, to build a task force for all of Central Florida and get a new concept started. He lost re-election, and the task force and what we were trying to do died with that. But what I realized real quick is, man, no one's fighting human trafficking. Like the task forces are great, and there might be there's more children being saved now, and there's things happening, but brother, judges are involved in human trafficking. There's a lot of cops involved in human trafficking. Obviously, we know it's our politicians that are involved in the human trafficking. It's our rich, it's our elite. There's
social
so many
services
people.
too. A lot of these supposed organizations, government organizations, are involved in it, right? Because they have access to all these kids, right?
And it was not the organizations completely. Because here's the thing, man. Homeland Security investigations, I met so many amazing law enforcement officers in that organization. I was partnered with them, and
well, they use it as a vehicle. Evil people.
I'll tell you how it happens. Bad seeds, bad leadership, and bad seeds. So it's just like the deep state and the CIA. Not everybody in the CIA is bad. Not everybody in the military is bad. Not everybody in the government. Not everyone in Congress is bad, right? But a lot of them are. And so you have these compartmentalized things. You have that leader that's on the take, or you have that leader that's a pedophile. And then he finds the people that might fuck kids. And then you have a certain element of people legally, justifiably, with memorandums or whatever they're doing, their task or their project or their mission, participating. The majority of the people in HSI are some of the best people I've ever met. They're out there doing everything they can to save children. The officers, the agents, whatever you want to call them, amazing people. But guess what? They have bosses in politics, right? And they get told what they can and can't do, or what they can and can't investigate, or this investigation gets told, nope, we're not doing that.
Or they arrest
because they have a director.
He just flees to Israel.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
The FBI, I would say, there's a lot of great FBI agents, but just statistically, I don't know the statistic. They're definitely the most corrupt. They wouldn't even work with us. Right? They wouldn't even work with us because I talked too much and I said too much, like, oh, you don't want to save kids because I might call something out that at that time your politician or your boss doesn't like. You're a pussy. You're a fucking pussy. And it's like, it's like we're supposed to be able to have differences in America. We're supposed to be able to be different religions and have different political beliefs and have different ways of looking at life. But collectively, to make America work, we all come together. We put those differences aside and we do what's right. We do what's right and we stand up for what's right and we fight what's wrong and what's evil. But we don't do that anymore because Biden's in office. Everybody has to play by Biden's rules and Biden's politics. And you can't poke the bear and you can't piss off the politicians, or you don't get the contract, you don't get the job, you don't get the work. Then Trump comes in office. Well, you better kiss the fucking ring, right? Or you're not going to get the job or the contract or the work, or he's not going to work with you. And you say one bad thing about Trump, you're fired. You're out of here.
So it's like, man, so few people are willing to risk their paycheck, right? Or risk their political standing within whatever organization And I get that to a degree. Like I've had companies that I've sold, and people are as loyal as how their paycheck to a lot of degrees, right? People that I thought were some of my best friends that worked for me and turned on me because they were offered money to do so, and that'll always be, unfortunately. But
Well, but here's the thing, right? And I've thought about this a lot. Think about how many service members got the jab, because they're like, how am I going to take care of my family if I lose my paycheck, my insurance, right?
My best friend was firefighter, and he was required,
Yeah, and it's like, think about how many federal agents, that's their career. I've got 5 more years, man, until I can retire and I get a paycheck and retirement, and my family's taken care of. They're putting their families first, and they've created a system, like you said, that controls us. We're controlled by this system. It is very hard to step outside of this system. I don't know what's going to happen to me once this podcast launches. I only have 130,000 Instagram followers. Apparently, my content gets shared all over the place. But like at the same time, if once this podcast starts, if it kicks off, and my message, I don't know who's going to blackball me or come after me or try to fucking destroy me, right? And I don't care. I don't care. I'm not going to work for Israel. I'm not going to take the money. I'm not going to bend the knee because I follow Jesus first. And that's my morals, my values, my principles, my faith. I'm going to follow Jesus, and you're going to have to fucking kill me. If you want me to shut up, right? Or throw me in prison, throw away the key. But at the same time, I'm not trying to hurt my daughter's lives, right? You threaten my daughters, guess what? Matt Murphy's shutting the fuck up, right? I'm just going to tell you that. The day I say I stand with Israel, people know that something got compromised that I'm not willing to lose. And I'm not going to get my children hurt for this. I'm not going, you know what I mean? So it's like at some point, man, we all have a line that they cross.
I was just gonna absolutely, man, and it's everybody can get got
somehow.
Yeah, 100%. And everybody's like, "Oh, they're a sellout, they're a traitor." It's like, bro, you don't know what they were threatened from. You don't know what they, like Dan Bongino. I don't believe that he's a bad man. I think at first he was a good man, but they got to him some way. Where now he's just talking about bullshit on his podcast every day, like stuff that has nothing to do with pedophiles or war or anything else. He's just talking about all these little political bullshit things, all these narratives, all these conservative talking points. And I don't think he's a bad man. I think they came to him, something happened, or they said, "Hey man, you don't do this."
Well, that leads me to a theory I have in that because you can't blackmail
everybody, right? There are people that are good and don't have that many skeletons, or if they do, they'll say fuck it, expose it. So I truly believe that Zionists or the state of Israel, outside of just blackmail, have some type of leverage that we don't understand, and that gets revealed to presidents. Like, we have this crazy weapon that we can press a button and wipe your whole family out, or we have this alien, or we have this being in captivity. That it's like it just. I understand the banking, and I understand the politics, and I understand all these things that they use control, but it's almost like there has to be some existential thing that once they reveal it to you, you're like, oh fuck, how do I fight that?
Well, but that's the thing, though, man. Is I think so many people have woken up that they do attack people like us, so there they will, and they'll try to make up lies. They'll try to do all this kind of stuff. I just don't even care anymore, right? Yeah, I just don't even care anymore. It's like, guess what? I haven't fucked kids, never will, never have, and I've done my best to save kids, right? Other than that, I've done a lot of dumb shit. I'll talk with you for the next 2 hours about every stupid thing I've done in my life in chronological order, because I don't give a fuck. I have never hurt anybody maliciously obviously war, but you know what I mean? Like, as a man, I've done a lot of dumb things. I've done drugs, I've drank, I've partied, I've slept with all kinds of fucking women. But guess what? I've never raped anybody. I've never touched a fucking child, never will, never wanted to, because I'm not evil, right? So I've never done the things that
your Achilles heels are kids,
100%. But that's what I'm saying, right? So everyone has a different way of getting gotten, so to speak, right? They got the kiddie porn guys. That they're like they literally are in everyone's phone and everyone's computer. The second they got you watching kiddie porn, they're probably like, all right, what's he do? Right? Oh yeah. How can I use him? Right? So it's like, that's what people don't understand. That's how this works, And so, could they plant kiddie porn on your computer? Or could they do some stuff? Yeah, but that's hard to do, and it's hard to get away with, And as the world's changing and as they get more power, maybe they could fuck you everywhere from Sunday. I don't know. But man, my point is it's just like, I just have to believe that, if I believe in Jesus, that he controls the world, he created it, and I'm fighting for good, that good's going to keep me safe until they're done with me, right? And if I believe in Jesus, I'm in this world, and I'm not.
But Charlie
of this
thought
world,
that,
right? Well, yeah. It might not. But, then that would mean there's probably some good entity that saved him, because you don't start talking about the stuff that Charlie was talking about the last few months, 6 months of his life, before they killed him, and be on their team. Right? He turned on them. So who saved Charlie Kirk? So did somebody save Charlie Kirk? Is there a good force doing good things out there? Did they save Charlie, throw him an MK Ultra and fucking brainwash the shit out of him, and Charlie Kirk's going to come back as the Antichrist? Who fucking knows? Dude, you can't put anything past these assholes, man, because that's how powerful they are. They can wipe your brain. They can manipulate and mind control you. They can.
They've done it. It's not.
It's documented. It's declassified. So if they can mind control Charlie,
Manchurian, whatever, is a real thing.
if they can do it to Charles Manson, imagine what they can do to Donald Trump. He walks into an office, they knock him out, they do something, mind control, whatever. They completely change Donald Trump's personality, or they just have a handler, or they say, hey, Donald, we're going to rape and kill your daughter if you don't do this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. It's like, and now Donald Trump's, you know, it's because we all know it's very obvious. The man that we elected in 2024 is gone. I'm not saying they cloned him and replaced him, but that is not the same man mentally.
They brought him into a room, into a skiff somewhere, and showed him something or told him something that he's like,
yeah,
fuck, I guess I'm going along with the fucking plan here.
Or they injected the microchip. You know, I mean, you know, I'm just saying,
any
man.
of it's
like,
possible. That's the thing is, I don't. There's I don't call
anything.
Anybody crazy that says stuff like this, because at the end of the day, it is all fucking possible, and
it's not just all possible. It's all documented and has happened.
Yeah, exactly. Not just possible, but done. You know.
Yeah, it's already been done, and they have the technology. I mean, Elon Musk has created that. What's it called? Neuralink. Yeah, that can control a person's brain. But he created it. He said,
you know this. DARPA's what, 30 or 50 years ahead of the general public, something like that.
100%. It would depend. You know, it depends on the technology. But yeah, they probably have already unlocked quantum. We all, because of the 5G towers, and this is just a real thing, right? Think about this. Do you remember the Nashville bombing going down? The Nashville bombing, Christmas Eve, Christmas morning. I forget. It was like 5 years ago, where the guy built the EMP and blew up 2nd Street. And Okay, think about this. They said that guy was just some crazy lunatic trying to blow up stuff. No, that dude had a warning speaker that told everyone to leave the street, everyone to get the fuck out of here. And he didn't make a bomb that blew things up and like destroyed downtown. He literally built an EMP trying to destroy AT&T's data servers, networks, and all the computers that were under the ground right there. So he was smart enough to know where all that AT&T infrastructure was that controlled the America. The brain for AT&T is here in Nashville, Tennessee.
The hub Chicago, for everything. Too, a gigantic concrete building that it's like 30 stories or 40 stories or something that nobody knows what the fuck it is, but it's an AT&T hub. It's all concrete.
Yeah. When it's down below, and they have like these bunkers under there, you know, and the limestone and the rock secured, you know, all this type of shit. This guy was smart enough to build an EMP and knew where that stuff was. Do you think that guy was crazy? Or do you think he knew a thing or two?
Like you know, the Vegas guy with the Cybertruck, right?
Right.
I'd like the Vegas shooting, the Vegas from the hotel Mandalay Bay shooting. Like everybody just stopped talking about that when there was a helicopter shooting. I mean, you can see the muzzle flashes coming from the helicopter. And
I know, man. It's insane. And you know that guy had ties to the Saudi family, and then there was operation going to kill the prince or the king or whoever that other night on the other side of the city. I mean, man. The point is they lied to us about everything, and you can spend all the time in the world going down every rabbit hole, you know, and every conspiracy and trying to learn the truth, and you can just spend so much time trying to learn the truth and lies, and that's why I've pulled back a little bit, and all I really talk about now is just the big conspiracy, the great deception, good versus evil, God versus the devil, what team Satan's doing, what team Jesus needs to be doing, and I just try to make sense of the things that could directly affect our lives, our decisions, and stop people from being deceived, right? And that's all I want to do. And I mean, I'm just going to keep trying to tell the truth, and to help people sift through the lies, and
you're doing an amazing job, man. I'll tell you firsthand, as a guy that's pretty critical and doesn't agree with anybody 100%. I mean, none of us should. None of us should be agreeing.
Yeah, we all should question.
Yes. If you believe 100% of what anybody says, or then you're in a cult, right?
No, 100%.
You're not intellectually honest. You're you know, you have to, like I said with my kids, question everything. But you know, there's very few people that I feel like there's not much we disagree on, and you're one of them. Where you know but you're intellectually honest, man, and you don't claim to know exactly or have all the answers, but you have your core principles that you stick to, and that's really what we have as men, right? It's like Trump did. I didn't become anti-Trump. Trump became anti-me, right? Or
amen. You cannot have said that better.
I mean,
thank you for saying it like that. Actually,
it's you know, my principles have. I mean, I've evolved over time, like you have, right? I'm not the same man I was at 20 years old, but but at the same time, my core principles of I don't attack anybody unless they're attacking me or my family, or somehow hurting the world. But I don't I hate war, but sometimes it's my core principles really haven't changed. But it seems like there's too
Yeah.
many people. There's not enough Thomas Masseys, and there's too many fucking Lindsey Grahams in the world, and
Yeah.
we got to get these. I think the step one is November is going to be a bloodbath. I think it's going to be a Zionist bloodbath.
Well, they're going to get their team that's doing the destruction back in office. And then also Trump's not going to be able to do any of the conservative things he wanted to
Yep,
do.
he'll be a
And
lame
it's just
duck
going to set
essentially,
this,
right?
yeah, and they're just going to set the stage for the next version of Trump to be even more idolized, be even more needed, because I think they're going to start the chaos then.
Who
The
do you think
chaos
that
is
is?
coming.
You think it's J.D. Vance? Do you think they're going to stick with the J.D. Vance deal? I think
Well,
early
JD
on that was the
Vance's
plan.
story is weird. The guy came from nowhere, and Peter Thiel,
I was just
documented, put him in every position he's been in his whole life. Most of the people that worked with JD Vance throughout his career is like, wait, I don't know what he did. I never saw the guy.
Yeah.
He never came in the office. So I think that you know, there's something weird. Peter Thiel was always talking about the Antichrist and shit. So if I had to have a top 5 Antichrist, JD would be on there. Jared Kushner would be on there. Erica Kirk is a wild card for me right now because she's a girl. But good God, I mean, that girl was literally born into Illuminati military-industrial complex family, Fort Huachuca, all these classified programs. She acted and these CIA videos, and then the next thing you know, she's Miss Arizona. The first time she competed in a pageant, she becomes Miss Arizona, Miss USA, and then I think, or I don't even know if she was Miss Arizona. I know she was just Miss USA, and then her from Arizona, and then she has like she's going on TV shows and dating things and
She's on the
dating a
board of
guy
the Air
with
Force
pizza
Academy now.
tattooed. She dated a guy with pizza tattooed in his lip. I have that post on my page somewhere.
I think is his name.
Yeah, and apparently she's Jewish, pretending to be Christian. She's from a Jewish family, right? And then like I don't know. I'm not trying to get sued by Eric Kirk, but I'm just saying like the math ain't mathin'.
Allegedly.
Her story doesn't jive.
All
Yeah,
allegedly
allegedly.
turning
This
point.
is all. Yeah, everything I said was alleged. I don't say not saying it's a fact or that I know anything, right? I'm just saying allegedly all these things happened, right? And so, man, it's like who fucking knows anymore, man? It's a big club and we ain't in it. That's all I know.
It's a club I'm happy to not be in. But that's for
Well,
sure.
100%, man. I could use that 7K.
Yeah, right.
But
I got a mortgage.
yeah, but unfortunately, my morals and values and what my children think of me means that much more to me. It didn't used to mean a lot to me. I wasn't doing evil shit, but like I said, man, I was a party animal, Green Beret, womanizer. I've done all the horrible things you could possibly do in that regard. But I found Jesus and slowly started to make my life better. And I'm always gonna have. We all are always going to have to deal with our vices and things like that and make mistakes. But I just try to be better every day, and that's all I can do. I'm not a saint. I'm not perfect. I drink and I know things, man, and I love Jesus, and that's it.
When I'm dead and gone, all I can hope for is that on my tombstone it says he was a decent dad. He tried hard. He tried to raise his kids the right way. That's. I mean, and I'm obviously not perfect in that regard. I'm a man that's I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff that I should, but I want my kids to at least grow up to be good adults. And my son's awesome. My daughter's freaking amazing. So that's really all I can really control. I mean, all the stuff that we're doing, who knows what impact it'll have, but my kids is the one thing I know I can have a serious impact on. So
100%, 100%, brother. That and really like, it's just like I know we're about to run finish this up, but when I was at the charity, and started to go on the podcast and talk about fighting human trafficking and child exploitation, I would get so many messages. Matt, what can I do? Matt, what can I do? How can I fight this? And really, at the end of the day, man, is everybody has the best of intentions and wants to get out and fight things, but God has a different calling, a different plan, different path for all of us, different purpose. And I think the thing that we all should focus on more, and I'm trying to be better at this because I was not, it's just being the best fathers we can be, right? And being as involved as we can in our kids' lives and loving on them and teaching them things and protecting them and teaching them right and wrong, not being the cool dad. I mean, it's fun to have fun with your kids, but being the dad that has expectations and standards and wants them to live their life the right way and to do the right thing, right? And then being the whatever we are, if we're married or have a girlfriend or just whatever, being a good example, being a man, being a leader, right? Not being a boss, being a leader, right? And being a good partner. And then outside of that, being a good friend, being a good member of your community, just being a good fucking person, trying to help others, right? Not being being a man. Every man should go out there and get on testosterone and get a supply of it, because you're not getting, they're killing our testosterone. I guarantee you, if every man in America started sticking a fucking shot of testosterone sipping their ass once a week, America would change.
Dude, I was
Right
down to.
now, it's a slippery slope when the economy starts to shit, and then supply sucks. Now we're all just emasculated, men with vaginas. But I'm just saying, man, like, men need to get back to working out and just doing men shit, and they're
Doing
killing
hard
our
shit,
testosterone.
man. We're meant to have to accomplish things. We whether it's climbing a mountain, whatever. But hard shit builds character, and we need it. It's the laying on the couch and
Yes.
watching TV. That's I think a part of outside of all of the shit in our food and our vaccines and all the other shit they're pumping into us. But a lot of it is just being men. Cavemen, call them whatever you want. They were outside killing fucking wildebeests, and now everything's just given to us on a silver platter. So, I think Joe Rogan says it all the time. Doing hard shit feels good, man. You got a sense of accomplishment, but when your testosterone's fucking 50, dude, mine was 174 before I got on TRT.
That was about mine too. But that's most men now, because the estrogens in the water, all that shit that's in the food, it's constantly attacking your hormone levels. Like, we are being attacked and we are being systematically, depopulated. They're killing us. I mean, the shit they're spraying in the air, the stuff they're putting in the food, the stuff they're putting in the water, the vaccines, all the medicines, pharmaceuticals, all the shit, like, they're killing us. I mean, it's proven to hurt people, give people clots,
100%.
to kill people. And it was specifically weaponized against fucking blacks, whites, and Sephardic Jews.
Well, I think that I am super proud to be a pure blood, right? Both my kids are, and that's just like, to me, if you willingly, like, again, my best friend's a firefighter, and he would have lost, he had to. There's cops, there's guys in the military, and I can't argue with that, right? Your livelihood, you got to take care of your kids and whatnot. But the fact that, anybody that's proud of it, or anybody that just willingly did it and just jumped in line and said, give me that shot, I automatically kind of categorize you as just a fucking weak lemming,
Yeah, 100%, man. I know a lot of people were forced into it. It sucks, man. Like, my dad got killed by it, man. So there's just a lot of vengeance, justice in my heart for that. My dad, like I told you, was Jewish, I don't know the exact lineage, but there was some Ashkenazi, maybe a little Sephardic, and or stepdad who adopted me, right? And he was a doctor, and he got the vaccine, and right when it came out, he's like, "I got to do it, man." And he got the vaccine. Had a stroke from the clots from the vaccine, and then had heart trouble from the vaccine, and then had clot issues, and then about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was diagnosed with vascular dementia, because the arteries to his brain were so clogged up, and they couldn't operate him because of one of the clots, broke and went in his brain and killed him. So he just slowly whittled away to death with vascular dementia in a bed, to the point where he couldn't move, all because he got that fucking vaccine. And man, it just, it breaks my heart. He was a great man. And I get it. Like, I say a lot of stuff, about Judaism, and I make it very clear. I have all the respect in the world for Jews that follow the Torah and the Tanakh, and that's it. The Talmudic Jews that support pedophilia and all that magic, mysticism, witchcraft, the Kabbalah, and the evil, hell no, man. That's evil. That's evil. The Torah Jews aren't taught they're better than everybody else and should enslave everybody else. It's just the Old Testament.
Silence
There's some
is
crazy shit
complicity,
there.
in my opinion, though, too. Like, there's lots of good Jews, people that we would consider good Jews, that won't say shit. And that's
they need to, man.
I
think
not
humanity
enough Dave
needs
Smiths
to.
out there. There just isn't enough Dave Smiths, and it doesn't, I'm not saying they're bad people, but you are complicit in the fact that you're just kind of going along,
Everyone's scared, man. Everyone's scared. I'm not making an excuse for them. I just know what they're doing, and it's time for men to wake up. Again, maybe every man needs to start getting on TRT. Maybe every man needs to start working out.
It definitely can hurt. And our population, there'd be more sex too. The guys would be hornier and jerking off less, because our population numbers are falling, are
by
Well,
design.
women need to get off birth control. Birth control has systematically destroyed femininity in every way, shape, form, or fashion. And birth control has destroyed femininity.
Yeah, because they're on it for decades, dude.
Yeah.
They're on it from teenagers until the menopause. That amount of hormones pumped into you unnaturally can't be good, right?
Yeah, like you got to stop mansplaining. No, it's fucking science. Like birth control it messes up their hormones. The woman's system is the foundation of their health. It affects their blood, their skin, their hair, their nails, their immune system. Like the woman's I'm losing my mind right now. It's been a long day. The cycle, right? And so when they get on the birth control hormones that stop them from being able to get pregnant, well, that throws them they're mentally in a loop because their hormones are off. It throws their whole body in a loop. With the pheromones and everything else that it creates, it makes women attracted to effeminate men. So women start going for they're on birth control. They start going for they're attracted to they want all the little soy boys. Right? They don't want a masculine man. And that's why women who get off birth control, especially after marriage, when they're trying to have kids, they're not attracted to who they married anymore because now that their body's starting to normalize, they want a fucking man. They don't want this little effeminate whatever thing that they've got, and so it's like, but it does so much more than that. It changes their psyche. It makes them masculine. It creates a lot of problems, man. But man, I do need to jump. I've got to get to work.
I think we went almost 45 minutes longer than we had planned. So
yeah,
again,
man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Don't. I hope that's not lost on you. That I know you got better things to do, but it's just good to sit with a like-minded guy that I know shares principles I do. And again, we're not going to agree on everything. That's just, and we shouldn't. We should have different views on things. And this is the only way shit gets fixed, man, is by coming together, debating, airing it out, and figuring out where we can cooperate and what things we agree on and how we can fight fucking evil together. So
100%, man. 100%. Well, I appreciate you, brother, and I appreciate you having me on. And I'd love to come back on sometime in the near future too, man.
Well, good luck with your podcast. I'll absolutely be watching it, and obviously we'll stay in touch. But again, man, thank you, and have a great weekend, and we'll chat soon.
You too, brother. Talk soon. All right.